and gets paid for it, and also protects people. Although the work is dangerous, but at the same time they are revered as heroes, and heroism does not live without envy. Being a raider means making people's hearts beat faster, but when his heart is beating fast, it means that death is near. We're transported to a coffee shop, and two guys are talking. One of them is outraged by the offer to be a human shield from the other. The guy in the suit and glasses asks him to take it easier because he said that he needs money. The second one realizes that it's no surprise that young woman, the guy from the Raider Bureau who gives jobs to people like him, lures him into a dungeon raid. He thought that when the man called him, he finally got a good deal, but as soon as he heard the errand, it immediately upset and angered him. He asks the guy why there is nothing else, even guys of a lower rank find work. He explains that raiders of combat classes are rarely given tasks and this does not depend on rank. Places have recently been occupied by magicians, others find work with varying success. Due to the fact that wars are more often injured, employers avoid them so as not to bother with compensation. This is the reality. In close combat, warriors have much more injuries than mages who fight from a distance and their teamwork is superior to everyone else. The guy is aware of this and the fact that there are no places for the raiders of his class right now, while cursing himself for not becoming a mage before. 11 years ago, the third year of middle school. The guy passed the predisposition test well, now he can enter the Mills Academy, a professional raider training institution, and then his magic ability rose to 97%. Songine, a girl who was currently at the peak of her magic skill, had 92%. It could be said that his performance was incredible, although the percentage of predisposition to martial arts was only 34%. He chose the path of a warrior, although there was no good reason for it, all due to the fact that his personal assessment of magicians was categorical. The guy believed that their ranks consisted of worthless buffers who couldn't even kill Tarak without the help of warriors. Now, on the contrary, the magic classes are on top, and the combat classes have fallen into the pit. He wonders if his life would have been better if he had chosen the path of a magician. Usually, the development of a raider stops at the age of 20, there is no point in regretting, nothing will change anyway. The man in the suit continues, "Hyung, this opportunity doesn't come often. I was going to offer this job to others, but after thinking about your problems, I came to you." There was a time when Hyung's talent made magicians envious. The guy clenched his hand into a fist in anger. Realizing that now he is a useless warrior of rank D, he thought about the difference between his past and present is too great and agreed to the offer. The guy in the suit was surprised. They sat in front of each other and were silent. The warrior realized that he had no choice but to survive in this swamp, not even to give up such a job. The man was happy, made an appointment for tomorrow morning at 7:30, promised to inform about the meeting place later and asked not to be late. The guy got up, took his drink and said with a touch of resentment, "See you later. You've got a lot of work to do." He asked him not to worry and go about his own business. The man explained that he also needed to go there and reminded him about the scheduled meeting. They parted. We see Hyung standing by a tree with a sword on his back, a shield lying next to him, and protection on his hands and knees. Around him are warriors and mages. They are standing at the teleport, which is located in a huge tree. Looking at the time, it was already 8:52 and young woman still wasn't there. He called him a BTCH and remembered him saying, "I'll see you tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow." He exhaled, closing his eyes, and said in frustration, "I wish I'd told you right away that I wasn't coming." He opened his eyes and looked around, thinking to himself that he was only a D rank, and Chong was in a rank mage. Why did he work in this raider bureau? He could join any guild. Why did he waste his time in this place? The guy laughed at the warrior who would soon have wiped a hole in his shield and continued that he would have been much bigger if he had been Jungkook, when a silhouette appeared behind him and said, "Drop out." Hyung said nothing. Then his face changed. He was in shock. It was Myungo Hyung. The guy was happy to meet and approached Hyung. It was awkward. They talked about work and its absence. The man is glad that at least they pay normally. Our hero reluctantly agreed. Myungho Hyung said that there was nowhere else to work except here and looked at the guy without seeing any reaction. Noticed that all the passion of people for battle classes was gone. And also said what is the honor of being a magician and shooting fireballs from behind the backs of comrades. Hyung was outraged. What a passion if he was starving to death. His friend asked him to do everything efficiently, and then they will drink a bottle of saju. The hero said without emotion, "Well, not bad." The man doubtfully spoke about the money and remembered that the last time he paid, the guy scratched his head and said nothing in response. The man winked, also scratched his head, and promised that this was the last time he would pay for it. Hyung smiled, embarrassed that he owed him something again. Their conversation was interrupted by a man calling for everyone to gather at the entrance to the dungeon, leaving in half an hour. The warriors weren't happy, so Myungho Hyung exhaled and said it was time to pack up. The guy thought about it and took out his phone. There are two things a raider needs to remember when hiking. First, it is blind luck, that is, luck that can inspire any of the raiders. Most often it paralyzes the brain and becomes fatal carelessness. At the moment when a person ceases to soberly assess the situation, the dungeon begins to test its strength. What the raider has now, is it luck or the tragedy behind it? 2. He was interrupted by a man. "Hey Hun, why are you stuck there, staring at your phone again?" Myungho Hyung isn't the first to notice this trait of Hyung's as he pulls out his phone before each exit. The man smiled and said, "Are you looking at a picture of your girlfriend?" The guy laughed and said it was nothing important. After looking at his phone again, there was a picture of him with his mom on it. He promised to be back soon and went to the dungeon. We find ourselves in a stone room, at the end of which are mages with staffs, and in front of them are warriors holding back the attack of evil spirits. The mage yells at them to hold their shields tight and keep them alive even when they're dead. Hyung was already exhausted. Magicians cast spells. They summoned Surt, the divine fire giant. Beams of light flashed from behind the warriors. The fire god destroyed the enemies. The battle ended. The defenders exhaled. Hyung looked at the Meteor Guild. They are newbie magicians quickly gaining popularity. With them, most likely, he will not die. It's time for a break. Everyone is resting. The man voices the remaining plan to our hero. They will have a battle with the boss. It is not easy for him, so to speak. Old age is not a joy. He says that if he knew, he would have trained more in his youth and raised the level. The guy replies that he is still as fresh as a cucumber and a level higher than him. The man asks if he knocked out an object, because in this dungeon good things fall. After all, it is rank. Yihyun doubts and checks the information on the screen. Suddenly everything breaks. He does not understand what is happening. The system is buggy. The guy is angry. The message appears on the screen. The Escher system does not work, communication with the user is lost, and the system launch is cancelled for an unknown reason. Hyung is shocked. What does this mean? A green ball appears in front of his eyes, telling him where to go. The system notifies that an unknown object has invaded. Recovery in safe mode begins, and the message cancelled immediately appears. The guy doesn't understand what he just heard. What kind of unknown object? Does he need to follow it? The man asks him what he's talking about, and the guy refuses. The ball appears in front of the man's face. Hyung says to him, "You said follow the light." The ball moves. Myungho Hyung is worried about the boy and asks if he has a fever. He tells him that everything is fine, but he has no idea what's going on. Hyung followed the light of the orb deeper into the cave and distanced himself from everyone else. The system still didn't work and gave an error. He became an awakened one 10 years ago, and the system has never shown any damage or recovery since then. He wondered if the voice he'd heard had something to do with it. The system failed again, and an unknown object invaded Escher. After putting all the facts together, he assumed it was just some sort of change. Perhaps the name of the Escher system came from the word Asa, which called the gods of Asgard Odin and Thor. This system is the last hope of humanity. That was 20 years ago, a disaster-filled year, when a tree of incredible size grew up in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Once it opened its buds and covered the entire sky with its foliage in 9 days. There was a lot of controversy about this. Some believed that it was a harbinger of the apocalypse, others that it was a blessing from God. In fact, it turned out to be a world tree from an old legend. At the end of 9 days, when the tree's growth ended, the invasion of monsters began. Many died from the clutches of monsters. The survivors suffered from hunger and plague, and people fell into despair. But soon they had hope. The first awakened, that is, a person with God's power. Among them there are also raiders. They hunt monsters. The Escher system is a powerful weapon that is run by such people, but if there are changes in it, it is difficult to think optimistically. Hyung, following the light, came to a huge door. It was the gateway to treasures. He couldn't believe it. There is a hidden room behind this gate, which is extremely rare in high-ranked dungeons. Usually you can find special and even rare items there. The guy was very happy, because the price of one rattle from such a treasure trove can exceed several 100 million won. He thought to himself, if there was an item of class A and above, he would be able to say goodbye to those dark days in his life. The guy asked the Lord, if he exists, to send him class A and higher items. Opening the door, Hyung found himself in a spacious room surrounded by columns with lamps. He didn't believe that such a space could be hidden inside, and what was said on TV was not fiction. In the middle of this room, there was a ball on a stand, and a lot of light was coming from it. The guy immediately realized that this is the object, went to it. After touching the ball, the system notified him that new equipment was received and if he would like to see information about it. He was glad that the system obeyed at the perfect moment. This item turned out to be the Lost Eye of Odin mythical class. Hyung was startled after reading all about the item. He was cheered up, because the best item he sold at the auction was from a class and it went quickly for tens of billions of won as soon as he registered it. For magic items, he can set the price himself, but this is a mythical class, the only one in the world. Now he won't have to go out of his way and the guilds will stop ignoring him. Now there's no need to be cannon fodder in the dungeons. You can say goodbye to the terrible life of a raider. The guy said, since it's my eye, why not try it out when I can still hold the mythical thing in my hands before I sell it? Put it on. Here it was interrupted by the system. When using the item is assigned to the user, do you want to use it? Hyung shouted, no, cancel now. He was very afraid that he might have lost everything. Now there is no need to carry the eye with him. If you sell it on the black market, you can earn hundreds of billions of won. the guy realizes that he no longer has the desire to get dirty in the dungeons. When he was in his 20s, he couldn't raise his level and didn't think the eye would be of any use to him. The system crashed again. It was definitely some kind of anomaly or unexpected change, but he was used to it a long time ago. Now that the dungeons have become a reality, incidents for raiders are not uncommon. Such unforeseen situations usually come down to either luck or tragedy. Hyung headed back to the warriors. The man excuses him in front of the magician and asks him to wait a little longer, and then the guy appears from behind the magician, who shouts at him to hurry up because they are already leaving. The guy, bowing before the magician, apologizes for being late and promises that this will not happen again. Later, the man taps the guy on the shield and asks him not to get sour. He replies that it's okay, everything is fine. He also says that Saju is on him tonight. You can not always be a freeloader. The man agrees in surprise. They catch up with the others. The hero notices that when they are inside the dungeon, there are no laws and regulations. Everything remains within these walls. Bragging about finding an expensive thing is tantamount to suicide. Standing in the line, Hyung thinks that it would be wise to sell the eye after the raid is over. The most important thing is not to attract attention. The magicians say that once the formation is reformed, let's continue. Then everything starts to sparkle above them. An explosion occurs and purple smoke begins to fill the room. Everyone coughs. Hyung realizes that the smoke is poisonous. If he breathes, he will die. We need to get out of here. The man shouts to him that the smoke is probably dangerous. The guy invites everyone to leave the dungeon right away. At the same time, he sees the man being stabbed by a sword. The frightened hero rushes to run. He understands that those explosions, toxic smoke, and dead people weren't caused by monsters. He is sure that dungeon thugs were involved. Their goal is to destroy the Meteor Guild. If you go to the exit, he will come across toxic fumes, and there may be killers waiting. It's better to stay inside now. The guy is angry that everything is going so badly. Now is not the time to whine snot on his fist. He found a mythical item. He will not give up so easily. A silhouette appears behind him and launches an attack. The guy dodges. The silhouette says, "I knew you'd survive, Hyung." The shocked hero sees young woman in front of him. He reminds me that he promised to come today. Our hero, judging by his expression, understood who was standing in front of him, so he asked, "Is this poisonous smoke really the hand of young woman? And also their meteor group?" Young woman made an incredible face that could let everyone know that he was satisfied with his work. As soon as our protagonist heard this, he realized that he needed to calmly understand the situation, so at the same time he asked the reason for his action. But the only thing young woman did was throw up his hands and say that it was his sponsor's request, and besides, many people hate this Meteor Guild. After all, when you disrespect other casings, then of course you quickly earn yourself a bad name. This is understandable to absolutely everyone. At this point, we can understand that dungeon thugs make good use of the narrow passages of the cave to fulfill their dirty contracts. Our character was sure that the attack on the meteor is just happened in the zone only thanks to them. This was all putting him in a very uncomfortable position, because would he actually be able to deal with his opponent? But as soon as he felt the energy coming from young woman, he realized that all this was impossible. Because he was an rank magician, such people only make up 2% of the entire population of the country. While at this time Hyung had a D rank, he is not weak, but not strong. But not that was their goal, so all they had to do was keep their mouths shut. But at the same time, he realized that the system was probably closed, so he wasn't sure if he could escape at all. He knew it was dishonorable to run away, but there was no other option, because he would have liked to be there for everyone he fought with, especially Myungho Hyung, who always made him laugh with his smile, but he knew that this was absolutely impossible. But of course, he realized that with the appearance of such a Yggdrasil tree, and says that the world has become so cruel that there is simply no room for the weak anymore. So as soon as our character turned to young woman, he asked him to let go, because he could not see anything, but at the same time he almost did not see anything. If he was attacked, if he didn't react to the attack 1 second earlier, he would definitely be dead. He looked at young woman's face and saw only bliss there. He liked to do this, because his goal was not only the Meteor Guild. Young woman continued to fire at our hero thanks to his abilities, and he, in turn, thought about running away, because why would someone like young woman know the protagonist? Because he is a simple D rank raider. What did he even do? Who wants him dead? Who in general can it be? Who? It was at this point, as soon as our character was facing death, that an image surfaced in front of his face, which made him understand that he was trash, that his life was insignificant. It was at this point that he asked young woman if his own father really wanted him dead. Young woman, in turn, laughed very hard at this, saying through his laughter that Hyung was a good guy and liked him, so it let him know that it was his father who was involved in this. Before the eyes of the main protagonist flashed moments like he had a mother, how at one point she died. He was very sad, so I decided to ask, because really in the winter, 5 years ago, this was also his assignment. But the only thing young woman did was smile and say that it was all amazing, because he couldn't even imagine what our protagonist thought about it. Hyung talked about how it was too much to do to his wife first and then to his son to try to kill them. Young woman was about to say goodbye to our hero's life, but it was probably at that moment that Odin's eye was activated by Hyam. Young woman didn't suspect anything at first, but at one point, as soon as he noticed that our hero was emitting an incredible amount of mana, which increases time after time, making our hero even stronger and stronger, he couldn't understand what was going on. Because he had a bad feeling, he decided to finish as quickly as possible with it all. Young woman once again directed his fire arrows at our protagonist, because he really wanted to finish everything as quickly as possible, but at the same time. As soon as the main character looked at the charge that was flying at him with the help of his eye, it was scatter. Because at that very moment, in fact, the main character was not able to see the Odin's lost eye was used, and it was assigned to Hyam. The only thing he wished for at this point was that he wouldn't be able to sell it now. Young woman was shouting, he was saying that it was impossible, the magic shouldn't be dispelled at all. But the only thing the main character wanted was to finish off young woman in the most brutal way, because only in this way can he repay for all that he did. We understand that one of the abilities of Odin's lost eye was that it can now absorb, and then even use, or rather create skills. A few moments later, after Hyam spoke his intentions, the super fast chains that had belonged to young woman just a short time ago started to appear behind him. He knew that it was simply impossible, because it had taken him years to master this spell, because how did a D-rank warrior raider have it in the first place? He started talking about how he didn't know how he managed it, how he managed to learn the ultimate spell, but he was still determined that our protagonist wouldn't stand a chance against him. But the only thing Hyam said at that moment was that unless someone tried, they wouldn't know for sure, so at the same time, the chains of both opponents. Young woman tried to dodge, because he knew that he was much weaker. He even tried to use a chain that the main character just couldn't use. He will not notice, but of course it didn't work out, because at the same moment our hero activated a new skill, absolute counting. Another spear appeared right in front of young woman. He tried to block it with another spell, but at the same time, the magic was scattered. So the spear flew straight at him, he definitely couldn't dodge, and the explosion gave up, a direct hit occurred. Our hero went up to his opponent, who coughed up blood, his broken glasses were lying next to him, and in his eyes you could read, well, of course, Hyam how to deal with him. After the battle was over, our main character simply fell, because he had no stamina or mana left. It was clear in his eyes that he could no longer. He did not even think that his end would be like this, because immediately after a successful find, he would die. It wasn't even surprising that he was lucky today. But death, who is compared to a girlfriend that the raider just doesn't want to go on a date with, turned out to be incredibly cold. So as soon as he closed his eyes, the system hung up, and then that a new control system was installed. It was even written that it can load at the point in the past that it wants to return to. As soon as he read this message, I realized that if they were talking about his past, it could only mean that he could have been saved. He couldn't tell if this was just another change, if it was going to be a good thing, or a tragedy. But apparently Tom didn't care anymore, because he wasn't in a very good state to have a choice at all. It was the only solution to survive. So he started the restart. Beautiful women appeared in front of him, who were most likely Valkyries. They were blindfolded, but they still held out their hands. They were talking in an ancient language, which of course he didn't understand. But the only thing the system told him was that he had received the new passive skill Eye of All Gods and Eye of All Gods, which meant that from now on, he would become an enemy of the Great Ace. So the gods of Asura watched him, or rather began to. As soon as it was all over, he woke up in his bed. He couldn't believe that this had actually happened. Looking at his hands, a message appeared in front of him that he had successfully moved to the past. He couldn't believe it. Because was it all a dream? Because did it really happen for real? He thought that it was really a dream, so long that he even forgot that his own mother was alive. He didn't want to interrupt it, so as soon as he saw his mother, he immediately threw himself into her arms, sobbing violently as he did so. Our protagonist moved to November 15, 2020, but some restrictions were imposed on him, because the body was set to only 20%. He noticed that it was actually the apartment he used to live in. The only difference was that the system constantly started giving him a task. The first one was rest, which was to restore his stamina to 80%. The difficulty level was the lowest, but the reward was an empty card. After all, he knew that there was something he needed to figure out. With young woman, it was the reboot of the new system that brought him back to the past. Of course, such turns cannot surprise him, because strange things happened to him. So if what had happened could give him new insights, then he could definitely adapt to similar situations, and that was the main thing. Since the system moved it exactly 11 years ago, now it should have been in the 3rd grade. In the 3rd year of training, it was Nornir. Hyam, what is happening? That this time, he definitely won't become a swordsman, because when he went to the calendar, he realized that he would become a magician, and this is exactly what will be his goal. While our character and his mother were having breakfast, the mother of our protagonist could not calm down, because it seemed to her that something was bothering her son, because he had always been persistent, and now he was crying bitterly. She put down her sticks and asked him clearly, did something really happen? but our main character said that it was nothing because he just had a nightmare, so at the same time he said that he wanted to tell her something. She thought that he was only afraid to go to the academy, because the profession of a raider is very dangerous and there is serious competition among them. Because if her son does not want to go there, then let him continue studying at a regular school, because not even if this academy is considered prestigious, so if her son refuses to enter it, then it won't be a big deal, but at the same time, he said or something that he wants to transfer to the magic department. At first, she said that she would support his choice, but then she realized a little, listening to his words, that it was something strange because he always said that he would choose the warrior's eye. She realized that her little Hyung is a very thoughtful guy. She didn't think that he would change his mind without a reason, so she went up to him and asked him if anyone was sure about this, because if so, then let him do as he sees fit. Because she would like to think that he did not think about money, but first of all about what you will do in life, because the main thing is to find your vocation. She will always support him in everything. All these words touched our protagonist incredibly. He started to cry, but he realized that now is not the time to cry because he still needs to take revenge on Minsum. His father raised a rank, he needs to get stronger, so as soon as he rested a little, he received an empty card for the quest. It was a start, and every day he trained more and more, but he still couldn't figure out what kind of test his new system was, because it could definitely benefit from it. The only thing he knew about was that he knew the future. He knew both the hidden parts and the ruins that could be captured. He had a good memory, because once he was even a dungeon guide. The only problem at that time was the lack of ability, except for absolute counting, as well as the super fast chain. He only had a battle class skill in his arsenal. But this should not be surprising, because he was going to become a warrior, but is there anything you can do about it? He sat down at his desk and opened the information board where his skills and stats were written. He saw that his level as well as stats were greatly reduced. But why was it that only passive abilities remained the same? After reading the description of his attracting the attention of the gods effect, he realized that his passive skills would remain the same as they were before the time jump. This blessing allowed you to speed up the development of the user, and with each new level, the characteristics generally rise one level higher. Of course, the fact that the gods were watching him made him uneasy, but what about the other skills? He read the passive skill of the absolute god's eye. It allowed him to see through illusions and recognize the truth. But the super fast chain that reached rank allowed him to force the chain to attack the enemy with lightning speed, but also paralyze them. Of course, there were some properties of the ability that he couldn't just understand, because what was the absolute god's eye for? But the super fast chain is a serious toy, and also very interesting. Looking at his characteristics closer, he realized that physical strength is not so important to the magician, but dexterity will definitely not be superfluous, because Roman, but there is nothing to say. But victory likes training and endurance, because unlike mana power, it does not increase combat power, it increases the fatigue threshold in the case when sometimes the same action is performed multiple times. After all, if you invest in stamina now, the effect will be felt with each new level, so as soon as he understood this, there was a new question, so what should he learn first? After all, a super fast chain would still be enough to attack, but even if he copied the enemy's high-level spell, he wouldn't be able to use it due to his lack of mana. This did not mean that he needed healing, because he remembered how in 2020 magicians were treated like garbage, but if a raider has any treatment, then his attractiveness increases dramatically. Such guys have always been appreciated and will continue to be appreciated, because you don't have to be a trader to do this. You can go in medicine, or somewhere else where you need the skills of a healer. That if he learns to heal, he will raise his authority. He leaned back in his chair a bit and exhaled, because the problem was that he was awakened by your similar skills. This is not an easy task, and besides, the fight with young women showed that you should use empty cards as reasonable as possible, because you don't know exactly how many cards the system will give him, but I'm sure that she wouldn't throw them around. Just as he was thinking about it, he noticed that someone was calling on his phone. He even forgot that he had a phone at that time, so as soon as he picked it up, he noticed that it was Kim Yu-young, his childhood friend, who called him. They lived in the same neighborhood, so they often went out together. She also dreamed of entering Mills Academy and becoming a raider, but at one point it happened something terrible. She was dead. These images were brought before our protagonist's eyes when she lay in his arms, slowly dying, but only now could he change the future. He had to change it, because everything that she wrote to him on the phone reminded him that she remained the same as he remembered her. He read the correspondence and heard a familiar name, Yu Sung-yoon, which was called Holy Cause, and her magic is donation. So there was no need to worry about everything. He said that he would go out for a while to his mother, and also wrote that he would be back soon. At this point, we can see that the very same Holy Virgin is in an incredibly expensive car, and we dictated her schedule for that day. Because first she will give a lecture for raids in the city center, and then a dungeon of a fairly small rank will enter with the raid, after which they will be waiting for a flight to the USA. While the driver was saying this, he looked at the mirror and noticed that his chairwoman looked very bad. Her condition definitely worsened. But the Holy Virgin said that there was nothing serious with her, because most likely she just sent a bad message. He exhaled, because there was nothing he could do about the fact that his chairwoman worked so hard, and also reminded her that her donation took her life. He hoped that if someone else started to master such a skill, they would definitely be able to cure the chairwoman. He knew that if things continued like this, the Holy Maiden of South Korea would soon leave them, because she definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Well, of course, after a little time, we can see that our protagonist has already met with the same childhood friend. She led him into the crowd, saying that there will now be a real pandemonium, that they will be in the very center. Of course, when Hyung saw her, he couldn't help but make fun of her, so he asked me if Tam had invited him just because she was afraid of getting lost. At the same time, she began to say that this was not true, and in general, why did he take it? Red cheeks appeared on her face, as well as tears in her eyes. The main character asked in this case to let go of his hand, but this time he was even more embarrassed, so he did not miss his opportunity to once again say something excellent in school, also an outstanding athlete, so why does she forget the road every day? That girl was very hopeful. She started talking about how she was the only one he was listening to the lecture to. Does he really think that Yoo Seung-yoon is so easy to see in person? Of course, Hyung knew that everything his girlfriend said was true, so he wanted to copy the magic of sacrifice today, because it would definitely be very useful in the future, because who knows, he might even have better connections in South Korea. Both characters had already sat down on their chairs, but the only person who was waiting for this performance was a girl. She was all eager, and our main character understood that this was actually a lesson about treatment, and the master of the Lotus Guild was the Holy Virgin Yoo Seung-yoon. She is known not only in Korea, but also abroad, because at a time when parenthood was not so common, the Holy Virgin fought from the front lines or treated the wounded. But he knows one thing that almost no one knows. As soon as he thought about it, the performance had already started. Yoo Seung-yoon came on stage, and everyone started cheering for her, not even knowing that in a few months her condition would get worse. It would happen during the Itaewon raid. The magic of sacrifice would be the reason, because there was only one way to help her. But as soon as he thought about it, again the girl who was sitting next to him started screaming, so he asked her to shut up. Yoo Seung-yoon went on to say that they were all going through an era of disaster and decline right now, because they're citizens who had given too much in their lives in the fight against monsters. Many died, but now that she took up this post, she promised everyone that their situation would improve soon. This knowledge of the living awakened is only a fifth willing to cede to the raiders, as well as protect humanity. In her words, there were absolutely all the good feelings that she felt towards everyone. She wanted to say in general that they needed courage. She asked all the awakened ones from all over the world, her father and her husband, to stand in front of the common enemy, join their ranks, fight for world peace, because it was the Guild Lotus will help them with the definition, she will help them. A childhood friend of our main protagonist talked about how Yoo Seung-yoon sounded incredibly cool. Yes, and our hero believed that his Yoojin was right, because most of the awakened are afraid of raiding. As soon as it was over, he knew that fighting the monsters was definitely not an easy task, and even before jumping to time, he was only going to sell the eye to end it all. But now, as soon as they got up from their seats, he continues to listen to Yoojin, who was completely delighted. Yoo Seung-yoon, she said that she should be her role model. As usual, Hyung didn't miss the opportunity to make fun of me, so Yoojin asked me to spoil the raspberries, to which our character replied that he needed to stop by somewhere, so he would go. For all the ages of the girl who was standing next to him, he said that she does not suffer from topographical cretinism, but also likes to make fun of her a little, so he already called her mother, who is coming soon. Yoojin was shocked. She talked about how her mom might let them both down, but to this, that he would fix it himself, and also he decided to choose a magic class. To everyone's surprise, he said that he would somehow teach her magic, because they would start with theory, step by step, step by step. Yoojin went to find out why he changed classes, but he just walked away, leaving her alone. At the same time, he actually went in the direction Yoo Seung-yoon went and met her driver, who was talking on the phone. He, in turn, noticed our character, so he asked for forgiveness because the chairman now does not accept any gifts, to which our main character said that he just came to see us. The man thought that this was just another fanatic who was obsessed with raiding, so he asked him to listen, that you can't show up without a reason, because he will put the squat girl in an awkward position. But at the same time, Hyung told Lee that the guard should listen to him, because he knows that Yoo Seung-yoon, but he can cure her. The driver immediately took him by the clothes and began to question him about where he heard this information. How did he know about the chairman's illness? But the main protagonist only asked him not to shout about it to the whole street, and there were people there. At the same time, when our hero was lifted into the air, the windows in the car opened, where Yoo Seung-yoon herself appeared. She asked Hyung if he could take responsibility for his words, to which he replied that of course he could cure her, that he could handle it. Yoo Seung-yoon looked at him with her own eyes and realized that if it was a box, he would have been revealed right away. But he was acting too confident. Is there really something to rely on? Yoo Seung-yoon immediately asked her driver how much time they had left before leaving, because if there was time, they could talk to the young guy in a quiet place. because there were too many ears. As soon as they sat down at the table, as soon as they arrived at the place, Yu Seung-yoon got down to business. She immediately asked how he knew about her illness. Hyung, in turn, said that he couldn't say it, but if she wanted to know about it, then he wouldn't treat her. Yu Seung-yoon realized that there was a cheeky guy in front of her. She laughed a little, but at the same time became more serious, asking him about how she would keep her promise. How would he cure her? It was at this point that our protagonist directly said that he was just going to copy her sacrifice skill. At the same time, the guard started shouting. Because did our character understand that it was a unique ability of the chairman? Because how did someone even want to copy magic? The formula of which they do not even fully understand. We, in turn, understand that a unique ability is a skill that is higher than S rank. It can only be obtained from an ancestor or by self-discovery. An ordinary spell can be mastered with the help of a form, but the formula of a unique one simply cannot be understood. Such an ability could not be copied, because it could be possessed either by the owner himself or by his family. That's what everyone thought. He said they wouldn't have liked it if they had. Yu Seung-yoon, on the other hand, asked him to calm down because they had to listen to such a young man first. It's not like he wants to heal her with his own sacrificial skill, is it? The amount of damage received due to the penalty of using the spell, then you need to use a healing of a higher rank, well, or the same as the spell itself. Yu Seung-yoon's illness was caused by her own unique ability, and Yu Seung-yoon simply can't heal herself by sacrificing, so his version is the only correct one. Sacrificing means offering a gift to the god, so Yu Seung-yoon has a restriction that doesn't allow her to heal herself. You can't sacrifice your life for your life. Yu Seung-yoon, who decided to believe our character and immediately started using her sacrifice skill in front of him, only said that he had to prove that he could cure her. Hyung knew that everything was going like clockwork, so he took out a blank card from his pocket that the system had given him so that he could learn a new spell. At the same time, he was able to use the card while learning Yu Seung-yoon's spell. He said that it looked like everyone didn't trust him, so he would have to trust them to earn money, but at the same time, he was able to use the donation. Offering to start, everyone was shocked because he actually managed to use a skill, a unique skill that could not be copied until now. The description of this skill was that it creates a healing wave that restores the stamina of allies, as well as dispels negative effects, but when used on the dead, it becomes an attacking skill, Court of Light. Since the spell is cast using an empty card, no penalty will be applied. He was happy to see this, but his daydreaming was interrupted by Yu Seung-yoon, who was already ready to give him a reward from the guild because the ability to cure her illness alone is already enough for negotiations. But in front of her was an ordinary middle-class kid himself, and it's hard to believe that only a guy is so bold that he can declare a request to the chairman. All of which made her smile, wondering what was going to happen next. Of course, the first thing Hyung asked for was sponsorship. He asked Yu Seung-yoon to become his sponsor. Yu Seung-yoon, as soon as he heard this, thought that it was only necessary to help our character succeed in raiding, to which he replied that this is his dream. For rapid growth, money is needed, as well as connections and much more, so he asks for such support from her. Yu Seung-yoon smiled and said that he was quite bold, and there was definitely a point in making such an investment, but he was also not deprived of me, so there would only be one condition. Of course, Hyung knew that he was her only hope of recovery, so she must be in a desperate situation, but she still kept her composure. Is this really a professional condition? Yu Seung-yoon immediately confirmed this, because as someone already knows, but her illness is a personal problem. It has nothing to do with any, but the main protagonist will need not only support. Yu Seung-yoon will simply be incomprehensible. Hyung, it's not fair to say that, but what does she suggest then? Hyung, that in any case, Yu Seung-yoon would lose more if she refused, not him, because she wouldn't be able to invent such a lever to manipulate her. But she only asked that if the guild that Yu Seung-yoon wanted to join, the one that the main character wanted to join. It only gave him the idea that they were trying to recruit him. Yu Seung-yoon, in turn, said that she wasn't joking, because she didn't know how to do it at all, and there were several reasons why she asked about it. Firstly, he knows about the illness of the chairman of the Lotus Guild. This information was known to a very narrow circle of people, and apparently he either has good information or just big ears. Of course, this all made our character blush, because his informant at that time is a leap of the past. But of course to say about he couldn't do it, so Yu Seung-yoon said that secondly, he had perfectly reproduced her donation. She had never even heard of something like this, and she didn't think that anyone else could do it, because there were so many skills that he could copy. Of course, our main protagonist did not forget about the third condition, which Yu Seung-yoon said was the most romantic, because he is in front of Yu Seung-yoon, but he never raised his eyebrows. Because when a child behaves like this in the presence of the Lotus Guild Master, it is very charming. She went up to him and gave him a little pat, so I ended up asking if there was enough reason to hire him. Right. We can understand that in the future, after Yu Seung-yoon's health failed, the Lotus started to lose its position rapidly. But it is still the best among the other guilds, so if you join them now, it will definitely be a good shield, and it will be treated with respect. In general, in the stop to the guild, it will begin to develop faster. At the same time, the main character asked us, because as far as it was known, contracts with minors are considered illegal, so what should they do? But the only thing Yoo Seung-yoon did was smile and ask, have I heard anything about the preferential right to negotiate? This shocked Hyung a little, because the preferential right to negotiate is a loophole thanks to which they are adult raiders cadets can receive guild support, and when the youngsters grow up, they enter into a full-fledged contract with them as investors. This is usually what they do with extremely gifted children. This made him very happy, because he didn't even expect to be in this number. After all, in the past, he managed to fly out even from a low-level guild. Yoo Seung-yoon also thought that there was something cute about our protagonist, so he said that they would send the contract to the address he had given them, so she asked him to think carefully before he answered. He knew that he needed to reproduce the treatment first, even though it was a great opportunity, but he didn't need to solve this problem now, because it was better to focus on the first problem, and the rest after, so at the same time he started his treatment. The guard also couldn't understand what was going on at all, because at this moment, some schoolboy that the guard saw for the first time in his life used a unique ability that only Yoo Seung-soon could control. He saw the effect with his own eyes, there was no reason to doubt, but even so, they had consulted so many healers a long time ago about the chairman's illness, that they couldn't even help you who devoted your life to recovery magic. He doubted it would be that easy, but by this point, Yoo Seung-jung could already feel the healing magic seeping into her body. Her health was being restored. Did Hyung really succeed? As soon as the guard saw everything with his own eyes, he immediately bowed and apologized to our protagonist, because now he can see everything. But Hyung asked him not to apologize, because he would not have believed the child either. But at that moment the child was cured. The passive skill first aid reached the 19th level up, so I asked Yoo Seung-jun to get up and walk around for a while. As soon as Ta got up from his chair, he started to cry because all the symptoms disappeared, but will he really get a fine for saving her? The main character, although he understood that he would not receive any fine, but still decided to hide this fact, he said that in any case, he would only be able to cure him at any convenient time. So at the same time he handed him a card, she would try to prepare everything that she asked for. He could even call her at any time, but she was counting on his positive response to the contract. Our character, of course, took this card and said that he had one more very small request. It was already underway by the next day. The main character was getting out of the car, being brought to the low-level dungeon of the Lotus Guild. In fact, he knew that there would be a lot of cool peppers gathered at Mill's Academy, and in order to compete with them, he needed to level up a little more, which was exactly what he was using this dungeon in front of him for. The guard told him that they had already prepared all the recovery items for him, as well as tools. Of course, these are the guild's surplus equipment, so they can use them as they see fit. Hyung thanked him for his concern, so he was about to leave, but the guard tried to stop him, because he thought that he might not be able to cope, because the dungeon was not the lowest rank. It was still dangerous to enter it alone. But our hero was determined, so he didn't want to back down. The guard breathed him a certain object. He told him that in this case he would really need this object, because it was a warp stone. He asked you to use it in case of extreme danger, which was an apology for his rudeness yesterday, as well as a thank you for treating the chairman. Our hero said that he was very grateful for this, so at the same time he entered the dungeon, he felt the energy that was coming from there. But there should have been no problems. As soon as he wanted to go there, the guard told him to remember about the warp stone, because it could definitely save his life. As soon as our character's foot entered the dungeon, the system seemed to change again. Everything turned purple, a dark shade. Because the system explained to him this theme that places his special space, it welcomed him to Helheim, the land of the dead. Besides, since our hero was in the dungeon, Yoo Seung-hyun, can he really handle it? She recalled his request to be allowed into one of their low-level dungeons, and also that he wanted to go there alone. She understood that this location was a very small rank, but for a novice raider, clearing it alone was almost impossible. The protagonist's character might have an ability, a unique ability, but he was still green, and what she thought was that Hyunwoo was well aware of this and still wanted to enter the dungeon alone. And I was very interested in his plan, but at that moment a certain girl entered the office and said that they had completed her assignment, so at the same time they provided the profile of our main character. All of the employees knew that it was rare for the chairman to hire someone personally, since she had already found out what Hyung's specialty was. But even so, Yoo Seung-yoon was surprised that our character wanted to choose a martial arts class, even though he could use such great magic. But still something upset her even more. She couldn't believe it, because the propensity for magic arts was 97%. This surprised her immensely, so after a few minutes, she called her security guard and told him to tell Hyung that they would need to meet as soon as he came out of the dungeon, because she wanted to personally test his abilities. We're back to our poor old character, who was transported to the land of the dead, thrown out like some kind of garbage right in the middle of the cemetery. He fell quite hard, but he still didn't understand what was going on. The only thing he saw was that a skeleton was aiming at him. which wounded his cheek. At the same time, our protagonist noticed that most likely there was a paralyzing poison at the end of the arrow, so he would have to work hard to defeat all the monsters that started to get up from their graves at the same time. They were all hostile towards him. He understood that even you can go crazy, but in fact, although he was very enthusiastic, he continued to catch arrows with his hands. At the same time, we can see Yujin, who put her face right on the pillow. She said that she would definitely kill our hero if he caught her eye. Metal was well aware that she was easily lost on the street, and still left her. No wonder he agreed so easily go to a lecture. Did someone really want to make fun of her? She doesn't understand him at all. 5 times he said that he hated going to crowded places, but calmly agreed to attend lectures. Yujeong knew that the man had always accompanied her, but now he had left her and disappeared somewhere, which meant that he had chosen a magic class at all, since he kept saying that he would become a martial arts class trader. After all, if he has a reason to change direction, then it should be sharp enough to give up all his efforts. And there is no new explanation. Vetibi Hyung is an incredibly sensible guy. It's always difficult for him to make a decision that even in a diner he spends 10 minutes choosing food. But in one morning, Hyung became a completely different person. She started texting him again that she would like to hear an explanation about why he ran away. So from her, it was at this moment that our main protagonist was not up to the message, because most likely because of the monsters. He felt an incredibly powerful aura. There were 4 planes in front of him, 1 skeleton of an archer, and also a draugr. He thought that he would be able to break through them, but he was lucky because he had brought along a cheap Lotus Guild wand, which allowed him to activate a spell with more power. We understand that Helheim in Norse mythology is one of the 9 worlds, the world of the dead. It is this world that is ruled by Loki's daughter Hel. The dungeon was created in the image of 7 worlds, except for Midgard, as well as Asgard. Niflheim is the world of eternal ice and darkness, Muspelheim is the world of Agnia light, Jotunheim is the world of giants, Alexheim is the world of elves, but Svartalheim is the world of dark elves. Vanaheim is the world of Vanir, and also the coldest place. The deepest place of Niflheim is Helheim. This place is definitely not for beginners, because the undead are terrifying. And even without holy power, it is better to avoid direct collisions. But it's not so bad, because it is in this world that he can test his new ability, because the victim is not considered not only a healing skill, because in a battle against the undead, it becomes a formidable weapon that hits the area called the Court of Light. As soon as he deflected the arrow that was flying at him, as well as counterattacking his opponent, he realized that it was not necessary to rely on weapons alone, because at the same time he activated the Court of Light for the first time. Although he did not have experience as a mage, but he still gained experience and also understood how to use weapons. That it was impossible to let out the chance that was given, he could easily handle his current level as well. He was very happy until the moment his staff broke. He knew that he was definitely finished. Because how did magicians fight? Really, like him, trying to deflect every blow with his staff, magic. He realized that he shouldn't have said earlier that he would gain experience, because he had lost his weapon, but the result would still not change, because he could still use his abilities. If he used the light source again, then all the monsters in the area were destroyed. His body began to recover. He knew that he was slightly confessing, because if it wasn't for the new level, then everything might have ended badly. Is it really because this skill was S rank? After all, it is not enough to register it in an empty card, because the magician's trick, it is without it that you should not count on blind luck. So at the same time he went ahead, although I understand that this is the whole situation out of the ordinary, but should he really use the stone now? But as he thought about it, goosebumps appeared on his body. He began to feel the sinister energy approaching, and he knew that if he didn't move, he would definitely die. So the only correct thing to do was to make his body start to listen to him, because first he had to find traces, but the only thing he felt was a shadow behind him. Nightshade appeared, it changed its status to danger. He was asked to leave the dungeons. At the same time, he tried to get out his inventory while taking out that stone, but the boss was faster. He threw our protagonist aside. His life points changed his status to danger too. He was asked to immediately use the restoring effects, their own items, because there was nothing left but to fight. Because the stone, as he couldn't say for sure, he was ready to accept death from this boss, but he noticed that he stopped. He was stopped by a girl who had 2 horns. She said that you cannot touch the guest that she herself brought. She greeted child of the fate of the sworn enemy. Hyen wondered, of course, what kind of woman was in front of him. Was this all her doing? But then he said that he thought that a great warrior would appear in front of her, who would kill him, but he turned out to be just a boy, and the body was ordinary. Even though the mana is good, it doesn't help to challenge the gods, so why did Loki choose him in the first place? But as he thought about it, he realized that he was losing consciousness. He had lost too much blood, but the woman in front of him was still picking at his throat with her fingernail. He thought, after all, will it really end at this moment? After all, Will he not be able to carry out all his plans? Will he not be able to take revenge on his father and become a magician? His dreams were bound to come true. He had to hold on, think of something. So at that moment the girl said that she liked the spark in his eyes, but he was too weak, the end was near, he should have gained his strength much faster. She grabbed him by the throat and started choking him, told him that if it didn't work out and that hell happened again, she would be the first to kill him. Of course, Hyun couldn't understand what was going on, but the girl kept saying that he was too important to them, so she would give him a chance to become stronger. She told him to expand his strength and also destroy the monster that was standing in front of him. That's when he would get a special gift from her, but she also said that his time was too short. At this point, he received a new task, which was called the Ordeal of Hell. She told him to crush his enemy in 2 months. The reward will be a gift from Hell herself, but the penalty for failure is that she asked you to remember all her words because she will definitely keep her promise. She wished him good luck while saying goodbye to him, calling him the child that Nornir chose. It was at this moment that a certain woman started to reach out to him again. He had already seen her, but this time her words were a little clearer. So at the same time, he found himself at the entrance of the dungeon. The wound had healed at all, but who was this woman who was in front of him? She clearly didn't look like a person, but the quest was still valid, so he knew from the title that it was probably a goddess. But still the wording wasn't clear, and why he was called a sworn enemy was that what he had heard when he received the Nornir system. Why exactly did he go back in time? What the hell was going on around him? What did she want? But what he did know was that he knew he needed to level up, because if Hell's words were true, then if he didn't make it, then she would definitely finish him off. He knew that crushing that monster would definitely not be easy, but the situation in which it was frankly shitty, because the problem begins even at the preparation stage. Because at that time it is not even capable of fighting like Mac, and it still does not have a low-level spell. Our hero understood that in order to advance further and we needed to know the basics, so as soon as he opened his phone, he noticed a message saying that Chairman Yoo Seung-yoon wanted to meet him. Was he ready to see her tomorrow? Hyung thought it was just in time, because he only agreed to the contract if I couldn't fulfill one more request. The next day, as soon as he came to the Lotus Guild, he noticed that they probably got in touch first, because they saw his profile, namely 97% magic predisposition. Even if you search the whole world, there might be a couple of people with such an indicator, but in the past, he chose a class of martial arts that clearly did not suit him because of his indecisive nature. Everyone around only discussed in their own way, and magic was openly despised. Such a situation was obvious, but this time the moment he was ready, he met Yoo Seung-yoon in the same room. She said she was waiting for him. Our protagonist immediately said that he was happy to see Yoo Seung-yoon, and she was also happy to see Hyung, and she immediately asked him about the contract, because her offer was very tempting. But he also knew that it was true because he would not only be given a cash allowance, but also equipment of a good class in unlimited quantity. In case of loss of property, no penalties will even be provided, and raid treasures will be distributed depending on his contribution to the common cause. Everything was in his favor. Such an offer was a raid of a rank and above. So at this point it seems that before signing he would like to voice one more condition, so that as soon as Yoo Seung-yoon asked to voice him. He also said that it hadn't even been a month since he changed his battle class to magic class, so it was certainly difficult for him to handle magic. So the only thing he wanted Yoo Seung-yoon to personally teach him was the first rule of survival as a raider. It was necessary to play the best card at the moment when it could get the maximum effect. The guard also understood that he was facing a difficult guy, because he felt it even at their first meeting. Even though the chairman is a master of the Lotus Guild, as well as a raider of the highest rank, there are very few of them in the world. It's just hard for her to believe that Hyun is asking her to become his teacher. He also threw up his hands and said that if you agree to this, then immediately they will sign the contract. Yoo Seung-yoon smiled and said that it was all very interesting, so he said that the contract is still valid because it still arouses her genuine interest. Of course, before that, as soon as they signed the contract, Yoo Seung-yoon decided to test his talent. Of course, the main character understood this, which was certain that the Lotus Guild would want to verify his strength. The security guard noticed that the chairman's face changed, and Hyun knew that in other words, he wanted to test him, but what was required of him? Yoo Seung-yoon just smiled, so with a snap of her fingers, a strange autumnal glow appeared behind her, and she said that there was a mana cube behind her, and Hyun needed to deal with it. Our protagonist noticed that this is quite a difficult task, because he saw a mana cube in front of him. Yoo Seung-yoon, in turn, said that such a person should be just like that. Since he signs a contract with Lotus, you need to be able to at least do such a thing. Usually, the mana cube is used for low-level mages, only 7% will be able to pass it, but will it succeed? He immediately turned to Yoo Seung-yoon and told her that she looked like she was trying to break him. But Yoo Seung-yoon said that she wasn't, and even if he lost, the contract would still be signed, the conditions wouldn't change, because she, the Lotus Guild Master, would guarantee him this. Hyun knew that there was no way out for him, that he couldn't back down, that he only had to go forward. Yu Seung-yoon approached her security guard and told him to prepare the documents. The guard was shocked because he didn't expect her to use such a method as a cube. He told her that even she wasn't the magic raiders who were hard at dealing with him, but the guy who was standing in front of them was just a teenager. Yu Seung-yoon just smiled, and she said that he probably wasn't one of the normal teenagers, so she thought it was worth a try. The guard had no choice but to press the button that activated the mana cube. Before our protagonist opened something like a portal, he had heard about this item even before time transfer, but of course he had never seen it in person. Its magic power was simply monstrous. But the only thing Yu Seung-yoon did was wish him luck, so at the same moment, as soon as he exhaled, Thor walked confidently forward. The guard said that he was a little worried, even though he understood the interest of the chairwoman. But in turn, Yu Seung-yoon said that he will succeed because she just feels it. How long it will take him to get out of the club, that's the question. At the same time, as soon as he entered the cube, he noticed that he was in a sea of mana. The only thing he was afraid of at that time was poisoning himself with it, because it is a disease that develops as a result of prolonged exposure to magical forces. But mana in that world is like oxygen. Without it, it is simply impossible to use a skill or skills. But if you overdo it, your lungs and heart can fail, which will lead to certain death. So I didn't want to waste any time, because it is possible that the symptoms of poisoning have not yet appeared. His main goal at that time was to find a way out, because if memory serves, then there is only one way to get out of the club. You need to find the doors that are connected to the outside, inside the endless whirlpools. He dared to concentrate, began to feel the waves of energy, because the path definitely lay among them, and it was he who would lead him out. At the same time, he felt something strange. He noticed that in one of the whirlpools there was a crystal with an incredibly magical power, and at first from there, it seemed to contain all the power of this place where it was located. While our protagonist continued to search for a path to his exit, the guard continued his dialogue with Yu Seung-yoon. He still couldn't believe that such a small boy as our character could get out of there. It seemed to him that it was too much, but imagining what he did just recently more precisely cured him of. Yu Seung-sung asked him, how long does such a test even take? Yu Seung-yoon replied that it took her 40 minutes personally, which is the best result in the country, so the security guard said that he had two options. Either he won't get out at all, or they will set a new record. Yu Seung-yoon also thought that way, and the guard hoped so when they looked at Cube A, they didn't notice that it was starting to break, it was cracked. The security guard looked at his phone and realized that only 10 minutes had passed, and a crack had opened in the cop, so what was going on inside it at all? Of course, we were shown that inside the cube, our hero continues to approach the crystal, from which very powerful energy was carried. Most likely this was the core of the cube, because if so, then he can get out by simply destroying it, and will not even need to look for a way out. He grabbed it and crushed it at the same time, so he got a new passive skill, Mana Control Essence. As soon as he did this, everyone outside was shocked. They couldn't believe it, because only 7% get out of it, but it takes them about 3 hours, raiders above about 2, for a rank 1.5 hours, but S ranks can do it in an hour. But it was our protagonist who was able to do this much faster than everyone else, because even despite the previous record that was set by Camilla from the Union of Europe was about 36 minutes, despite the fact that she is a genius of magical practices. But right at that moment, Hyung broke that record by a 26-minute margin, and the security guard ran up to him and started yelling at Tom that it was unbelievable that he made it in a full 10 minutes. So Yu Seung-joon also came up to him and asked how he even managed to get out so fast. But to this he replied that he just found some crystal inside and then broke it all together. Yu Seung-yoon was even more shocked, because the crystal mana cube is a vessel that stores all the energy of magical space, and an ordinary awakened person can't even find it, much less destroy it. So if the person who was standing in front of it was able to break it, then it means that their mana is much greater than the cube's energy. Yu Seung-yoon turned her back on him and blew her hair in the wind. She said that in the name of the Lotus Guild, from her word of honor, she would teach him. She was definitely happy about it. By this point, we can see that not only his girlfriend, but also his mother are standing at the door of his house. They are already waiting for him, because he did not answer the phone. However, it was at this moment that Hyun got out of the black expensive car, and everyone was shocked at this, because why was it him who got out of it? The mother even thought that he started doing something bad, but as soon as he came home, he immediately told his girlfriend everything. He told her that the martial arts class was not suitable for him, so he decided to go to the magic class because he had already finished training and signed everything. He was even sick from military class. The girl could not find a place for herself, because just a few days ago I confirmed that magicians have no prospects in the future. Does this person really have a fever, or is the slate cracked? But our protagonist just threw up his hands and said that a person is just like a million. He can change his decisions at any time. Yoojun, in turn, began to talk about how she didn't think she would hear from him like this. Are you sure if he chose the art class just because of his mother? Despite his magical talent, because being a magician is not profitable and it takes a lot of energy. She started saying all the things he had said in the past, specifically that raider warriors had a hard time finding work because the chance of injury was too great, and the employer was reluctant to pay the costs because that was what he wanted to support his mother with. But Hyung stopped this dialogue, because you were more interested in doing something at his house because really her parents are on a business trip again. But the girl only said there that she was just visiting, and all I said was that she could stay the night. Our character liked it from her because their real expanse is that their apartment, which has a couple of squares. We, in turn, understand that Kim Yoo-young is the only daughter of a very wealthy family and a businessman. Her parents were engaged in processing the remains of monsters, and then selling them on world markets. In other countries, sometimes new monsters appear, they have to arrange labor voyages. That's why Kim Yoo-young is always on her own, and their parents are very close friends, so sleeping in their house is a common thing. At the same time, he looked at her and said that if that was the case, then let her teach him the basics of magic. She said it wasn't for nothing, so she decided to think about what our protagonist should do to her. She thought for a long time, because she hadn't thought about this before, so in the end, she told him to fulfill her wish, absolutely any, because if he didn't agree, then she definitely wouldn't teach him. The main character thought and said that he agreed, but the term of their agreement is only a year, because if she does not come up with a wish on time, then the deal is over. Kim Yoo-young said he was a greedy guy, but she still agreed. He thought, while smiling, that she would definitely forget about all this, so I decided to tease her again. He asked her, after all, what was wrong with her face, and did she come up with some kind of vulgarity. Of course, she took the pillow, and we will paint it very much, saying that most likely our character stopped wanting to live, so at the same time she took the pillow and started hitting him on the head with it, telling him to shut up. Our hero's mother invited them to dinner, because the food was ready, and at this time everything they did with Kim Yoo-young turned into pure fun. Not to say that our hero was unpleasant, because he was smiling, he was having fun, but it was at this moment that we can notice that Min Sono, the father of the main character, continued to deal with monsters. He was praised, because only thanks to that they easily coped with monsters, because they had not had such a fun raid for a long time. You were offered to join the guild, because if this happens, they will form a strong and powerful alliance. But Min Sono made it clear that he did not have such plans. He asked him to forgive him. The man who called him to the Scarlet Guild kept picking on him and saying that they would provide him with all the comforts, but the only thing Min Sono said was that he was already tired of him, because he didn't like all the greed that comes from all people, but is it even inherent in a person? He quickly used some kind of skill on the man, as if chains were binding him, his eyes blurred. So after a moment, Min Sono wasn't there at all, and the man from the guild couldn't figure out where he was. Of course, while they were dealing with all the loot, Hyung didn't waste any time with Yoo Soon-yoon. As they continued their training, Yoo Soon-yoon wanted to see his fighting skills, which meant he wanted to have a training duel. The main character thought it was too much, but Yoo Soon-jung thought that a person who dealt with a mana cube in 10 minutes shouldn't worry about such a small matter, so she asked me to attack her. Of course, at that moment, our protagonist was only thinking that he had noticed that Yoo Soon-yoon's battle outfit was not in vain. She had planned it all from the very beginning, so at the same time, as soon as he exhaled, he began to prepare for battle. He took up a stance, continuing along the way by customizing his body parts. He adopted a typical warrior stance, with which you can evade the enemy's withdrawal, as well as counterattack. He tried to hit Yoo Soon-yoon, but she stopped his fist more and more with her hand, and also threw it back. Of course, in the beginning, he thought that he would be able to deal at least one blow, but Yoo Soon-jun was a raider of the highest rank, and also a healer. She, as soon as she threw our hero aside, reminded him that he kind of wanted to choose a martial arts class, because if so, then he couldn't get rid of old habits. Because a mage can't just mindlessly attack, so I asked him if he knew what the class is different in the first place martial arts from magic. Hyung said distance, because it's melee and ranged combat. Yoo Soon-yoon confirmed his words, and also explained that the raiders only weaken the enemy at a distance, only then rush to attack. But for some reason, the protagonist tries to reduce the distance to the enemy at once, because this is a tactic and any mage is doomed to defeat. So the only thing I've decided to do is make it harder. After all, Tom needed a clear example to understand how real magicians should fight. She took up her own stance and said that this time she would also start attacking him, but not so much that he would get hurt. But still, she warned that in extreme cases, I would get him injured with recovery. She knew that he was capable of more, so she asked him to fight with full dedication. She aimed a small ball at our protagonist, which looked harmless, but at the same time it turned into a huge beam that almost killed our hero. As soon as she used this ability and the main character dodged, she said that now it was her turn to attack. At the same time, a skill, Super Fast Chain, was activated, and he tried to hit Yoo Soon-jung with it. Of course, he couldn't hit it, but she was surprised that he also had such a skill in reserve. She realized that it was full of surprises. But whatever spell he had, he wouldn't use it if he couldn't hit it, while activating his own chains that hit the target. They were so fast that you couldn't even react to them properly. It amused her that even though she hadn't put a fifth of her energy into the attack, she hadn't expected him to stay on his feet, so she decided it was time to activate more of these chains. As soon as they flew straight at our hero, he decided that it was time to activate Absolute Count, which would definitely destroy Yu Seung-jun's skill. She couldn't believe it, because how could the boy in front of her be able to reverse the spell and break it? She was beginning to get excited by the sight, and she knew that he was making her wonder over and over again, so what else did he have in his arsenal? Of course, this amused Hyung, so he decided to take advantage of Yu Seung-jung's vulnerability, and was able to attack so fast that for someone who wasn't trained in magic to also have such power, it was too surprising. After all, for a magician this is a mandatory ritual. Only skilled wizards can cast a spell in silence. Like Mac, this guy did not know how yet, then we can say that he can use magic without reciting the spell. As soon as Yu Seung-sung realized it, our protagonist realized that he was almost out of mana and that he was facing a real monster. But Ta, in turn, said that her student has many hidden talents, but he is still very illiterate, because at the same moment she passed right under him and turned him right on the floor. He fell straight onto his back, which made him stare at the ceiling. Yu Seung-yoon walked over and leaned over him. "Thank you." Because did he really think that he could beat her? At the same time, she helped him up, she gave him a hand, but he was still shocked, because he didn't even notice her last blow. That's what a raider of the highest class means, because when you devote yourself to martial arts classes, you only gain experience in close combat, and there were endless magic attacks as well as their incredible speed. Yu Seung-yoon, in turn, looked at him and realized that her student would probably do something, but she didn't want to show it. She only said that during the fight she remembered something. "I remembered the very thing that everyone was thinking about." She talked about the style of fighting which no one has ever been able to master, but she thinks Hyung is capable of it, so she asked him if he wasn't intrigued. After all, if he is silent, he can call her teacher, and she also congratulated him on this because now he is her student. It was at this moment that our hero was doing something of his own. While Yujin was sitting next to him, she constantly forced him to listen to her while constantly eating ice cream, which annoyed him very much. In fact, they continued to talk about magic, and she continued to give him lessons, telling him in the drawings that there were combat, strengthening, and healing magic, but of course there were others. She only mentioned the main ones. By this point, as soon as they looked at it, Hyung's magic proficiency had increased by a full 5%. He understood that the system sent him notifications whenever he progressed, as if it was happy about his success. But the only thing he wasn't happy about was that Kim Yoon continued to look down on him, saying that he didn't seem to be from a martial arts class, because in 2 days he learned spells that take more than a month to learn. But our protagonist asked not to be surprised, because she learned it herself. This is all in 3 days. But of course, Yujin found a new reason to find fault with him. She told him to call her teacher, and she didn't see anything strange in it, because she had started studying magic arts before him, and at this rate, he would catch up with her in no time. But the only thing he really thought about was that he was just predisposed. He just couldn't help it, because his life was on the line. Kim, who took another can of ice cream, said that she didn't tell him that she was very surprised when he chose a martial arts class, and damn everyone, that the magic class is not in demand. Because how could he bury his talent in the ground? It was very stupid. But as soon as he thought about it, he slightly misunderstood the moment. Chains began to appear in front of him, just like his father had. After all, did he really choose the path of a warrior of his own free will? It was as if the chain had been broken, as if his shackles had been removed. So at the same time, he continued to look at Yujin, who was asking him about the fact that he was probably practicing with another teacher. Yujin thought he was the one, but he was really confused, because he probably imagined it. Because he heard someone's voice just recently, he kept getting pictures and then that his life was worth it, so he decided to think for a while. He thought about how people had appeared in front of him. He would like to invent some kind of potion that would solve all the problems. In front of us, the security guard continues to instruct most people. He thinks that they are all good, because compared to last year, the average figure is higher. Looking at Yu Seung-yoon, he noticed that she wasn't listening to him, and he thought that she was probably thinking about Hyung. Da smiled sharply and said that her security guard couldn't be fooled. At the same time, he looked up and said that it was she who was going to teach her new student what many raiders had tried to master before him, but not one of them managed to achieve a significant result. But the only thing she said was that the guard himself saw his abilities, because if so, then he also had to understand that all his movements were perfect. She said that if an S-rank raider appeared among the mages, it would definitely be Hyung. In Korea, so far only she has managed to reach this rank, but she is still a healer. Her combat magic is weak, but what will happen if our protagonist joins their ranks? Then definitely the magic class will be waiting for a major change. Potions that increase mana are powerful elixirs that limitlessly boost the awakened's mana. Raider who has the specialty of a magician will probably be interested in such a brew, which is why our protagonist wanted to create it, but he did not succeed. He can't do it for the first time, even though he has used up too many ingredients. His entire shell has turned into something scary. He was so hungry for money, he was sure that the liquid would turn white at the first stage, and he didn't even have anyone to ask, so he just had to hope that he could do it next time. At that time, it was November 2020, their time point at that time, no one knew how to make a potion to increase mana, because it will be created only in 5 years. Now only he knows what ingredients were needed and how to mix them, but before his return to the past, the recipe was published by one of the world-class alchemists. He once said that he just wanted to create an elixir that would become a reliable support for all the raiders in the world. At the same time, Hyung realized that it was useless for him to try, because this is all a translation of raw materials. It would be better to change the approach. Most likely he just needs to find the creator, Lee Yisun. After all, even if the potion could not be brewed, it would not be superfluous to meet him. He still had nothing to regret. Of course, our protagonist knew that the alchemist was only a first-year student. Was it really like Mal's academy? After all, if this is all true, then he will decide to visit him. Well, of course, at the same time, when our character was about to leave, then his mother came into his room, who saw all this mess. She wanted to call the police first, but then she got up that nothing bad was missing, because how can thieves even make a mess in the kitchen and not take anything? Of course, we understand that there are several personalities who, with the advent of Yggdrasil, as well as monsters, took the lead the fastest. One of them is the fast sword Lee Yisun, the first top-ranked South Korean rider to take the place of the first awakened one. After his disappearance, the one he needs to meet is Lee Yisun's youngest son. By the time our protagonist approached a certain girl, she asked him where he was going. He replied that the portal to Daegu would be great, because everyone understood that this particular area is considered closed due to the threat of both monsters and monsters. All sorts of creatures appear there all the time, so every step of any person can be the last. Daegu is not equipped for fun, but if someone is heading there now, then he has only one reason: he must be a student of Mil's academy. Right at this moment, as soon as he was able to get a ticket, he was standing in front of a huge dome, because a little more and you will see the main gate of the academy. Our character has too many memories associated with this place, but at that moment they did not make sense, so he spent too much time chatting. He went inside. He knew that the area wasn't safe, there were monsters lurking on every corner, but he didn't care, because the only thing he dreamed about here was just meeting the same Lee Yisun. He had already entered the academy with a temporary pass, because he knew that Lee Yisun was in a martial arts class. But of course, he does not have any military talents. It is unlikely that he will even use combat combinations. He decided that it was because of this that he would look for him in the lecture hall. That's probably where he was sitting, but as soon as he went to the lecture hall, he noticed a huge group of people talking about how they should not have stopped, because if they did, they would switch to them when they found out that they had helped some stutterer. It was at this point that our protagonist realized that time would make a noise, because one hell of a lot of people were standing there, so he went inside. He saw that the boy with green hair was still being beaten. He noticed that he was clearly not a very good person, and it was the same Lee Yisun who was standing in front of him. The main character immediately asked him if he was okay. Of course, Lee Yisun didn't know who was standing in front of him, so at the same time, he was approached by the same bully who said that this was probably Stutterer's little brother. He didn't even know that such a person had such things, but the truth was that they didn't look alike. The big guy also said that he thought Lee Yisun wasn't talking about his family because they were all dead, so he wanted to switch to our Hyung at the same time, but of course it didn't work out because he just threw his hand back. Our hero turned to the poor boy and told him that he had better go to the infirmary. Can he go at all? The bully didn't like that our protagonist was talking to him like that, because he was behaving too well and he didn't understand anything. Is our hero just tired of living? But the only thing Hyung said was that this was the second time he was grabbing like this, and they were grabbing him too often by the collars. So he remembered everything that Yujung had taught him. He remembered that first you need to imagine an image, then come up with a formula, construct it, and also bring it back to you. Put them into action. This was all the basics of magic, and the image that our protagonist presented was a flash of light that flew like an arrow, which was exactly what Yoon Ji-yoon taught him during their training. He activated this flash, so at the same time, the bully started coughing. He was annoyed by all this, and Lee Yisun noticed that the boy who saved him used the spell without words. Everyone was shocked by this, because no one had seen cast Hyung. They thought that a simple sacred arrow couldn't break the arm of someone who was going to become a martial arts class raider. Could it be the same person? Could it be the same gamer who was threatening with his strength really just full of dogs? Could it mean just that he just likes to show off? The bully of course heard every comment on his own, because at this rate he will definitely lose his authority. He knew that he couldn't just stand there. He didn't even know who was standing in front of him, but he definitely couldn't get away with it now that he had drawn his sword. Lee Yisun started shouting at the main character to dodge, and as the goon drew his sword, just as the goon was about to attack, you flashed a memory right in front of our faces that Yoon was teaching him how to use a force field to evenly wrap his body in mana, and then abruptly choose a force. It was at this moment that he was able to use this skill, which surprised the bully incredibly much. He watched as his sword just flew away, and it was at this point that our protagonist just got close to him so fast that he was able to grab his face with his hand. At the same time, he used the sacred arrow again, so that the goon fell unconscious. Lee Yisun's only question was, what kind of person was standing in front of him? But as soon as Hyung looked at him, he was scared because he was really scared for himself. But after everything that our protagonist did, he just walked up to the bully and realized that he had hit him properly. He realized that he should use the potion on the bully at this point so that he would heal a little so that there would be no such consequences. Lee Yisun looked at it in surprise as a certain red liquid kept dripping on the person's face, after which it just took and healed. It was at this point that Hyung turned to Lee Yisun and said that it was time to go to the infirmary. Lee Yisun was incredibly scared because he didn't know what to expect next. A few moments later, they were already climbing the stairs, Lee Yisun running after our hero, saying that the medical center is in the other direction. It was at this point that Hyung stopped and said that there was no one around to hear them. Lee Yisun thought that he knew it. He was already disappointed because there was a person who knew who he was. Lee Yisun waited for a while and asked, did his father send him? The main character turned around at the same time and realized that it looked like there was a misunderstanding between them. It was not necessary to annoy his vigilance, so at the same time he replied that it wasn't his father who sent him, he didn't even know him. Looking at Lee Yisun's face, Hyung could tell that he still didn't believe him, and Lee Yisun also asked, why did you even come up to him? But our protagonist only had a request. He said that we need to brew one potion, but Lee Yisun at the same time started shouting that he does not understand anything like this. He definitely does not know how to do it. But our main character had solid proof. He took out an empty potion container. He said that it was his own potion, which he sold on the black market. Lee Yisun just started panicking, because how did the person in front of him know that he was selling a potion, since it definitely couldn't be traced through the black market? But our main character said that everything was obvious, because his interlocutor had everything written on his forehead. He had it written on his forehead that it really could not be calculated through the black market, because the market is really a system that carefully hides the names of its participants, what is selling, what is buying. Everything is carried out using the Escher system, so confidentiality is fully respected. If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have even considered selling his eye. But there was no point in talking about it anymore since he had already activated it on himself. But it was still a good thing, because the black market operates under his new system. Otherwise, if you couldn't buy a potion, then things would definitely suck. It was at this moment that he once again held out the empty potion directly to Lee Yisun's face and asked once again. After all, his creation was in his hands. Lee Yisun, on the other hand, even though he had everything written on his face, so at the same time said that our protagonist understands that he wants to stay in the shadows, but he didn't have time. We can see the whole story from the eyes of Lee Yisun himself, how he thinks that he made a mistake putting the potion on sale, because he didn't think that everything would turn out this way. He just really needed money. He even said that if his father found out about it, then he would definitely the end. It was necessary to somehow get out of it. Lee Yisun decided that all he had to do was ask him to keep it a secret from the others, but despite Lee Yisun's fright, our protagonist said that he didn't bring up the topic of the potion for the sake of threats. He put his hand on his shoulder and handed him the potion. He said that he just needed an excellent alchemist who she'll cook something for him. Lee Yisun looked at our character. He realized that he wasn't lying. He realized that his praise was real, but surely it wasn't sent by his father. He gathered his thoughts and asked, after all, who was this person standing in front of him? But the only thing Hyung said was that he was a future student at Millis Academy, and he asked me to call him Min Yi-hyun. Lee Yisun turned away, holding his potion in his hands, and said that he was listening carefully to the main character's conditions. They probably went to Lee Yisun's house, and Hyung said it looked pretty neat, so after a bit of rumpling, Lee Yisun asked, so what did our hero need anyway? But what he said just threw Lee Yisun, because he said that he needed a secret means to increase mana, a potion that will allow traders to replenish their energy without stopping. All these words that Hyung said shocked Lee Yisun, because how can you replenish your energy without stopping? Is this even possible? But the main character understood that this was certainly possible, because it was the person who sat in front of him and created this thing. Lee Yisun wondered what ingredients should be used to achieve this effect, mandrake root or spring water, but that wasn't enough. At this point, the main character understood that now the atmosphere definitely changed dramatically, because he stopped stuttering and also named most of the required ingredients. Lee Yisun was a real genius, and our character wanted to make sure that he was a supporter. But as soon as Lee Yisun finished his thoughts, he said that our hero should ask another alchemist to create this masterpiece. But the only thing Hyung did was take him by the shoulders and said that he wanted it to be made by the person who was sitting in front of him, because he did everything necessary. That's right. Of course, he knew that other alchemists might be able to create this potion if they had the recipe, but their skills weren't even close to Lee Yisun's, so it was worth fighting for such a guy. He looked at him closely and clearly asked him if he could help him. Of course, Lee Yisun had no choice but to just agree, but he didn't promise that everything would go well. But the main thing was that the protagonist didn't care, because failure is just a stepping stone to success. He doesn't care that he will lose a lot of money because he believed in Lee Eason's abilities. He knew that it wasn't an easy investment, but he was willing to risk everything because he would never be able to create such a potion anyway, so he said that he was relying on Lee Eason. All these words brought tears to Lee Eason's eyes because for the first time someone believed in him. But another plus was that finally our hero began to make even more friends and new connections. As soon as the main character left Lee Eason's room, he was just left alone, constantly replaying all the words that Hyung had said in his head. He wondered if anyone had ever relied on him at all, even once in their lives. After all, unlike other brothers, he lacked talent, he was always cowardly, lonely, his mother did not become early, and his father never recognized him as a son because he did not stand out from others. It seemed strange to him that he had been told that he could make mistakes, that this was the first time he had been trusted, but why was it even so? It was these words that moved him, and he began to cry like a child. But by this point, our protagonist had no time left, his tasks that were given to Hell were coming to an end, he needed to have time to defeat that very monster, that boss. Together with the chairwoman, he continued to dodge, using all of his skills, even the new ones that were only recently used. They surprised the chairwoman, because after just a month, cracks formed on her barrier, which was an incredibly fast progress. As soon as our protagonist wanted to use the new ability, the guard said that the time was up because they both worked hard. But he still couldn't believe that the training ground, made of metal, had almost fallen into disrepair because it was hard to leave a scratch on these stones. He knew that if he hadn't stopped the battle, it would have been a very beautiful ruin. The chairwoman, when she got up in her usual pose, said that her student has an incredible speed of development because he can already use various spells, and their power is sometimes surprising. Does someone teach him theory in addition to their training? Of course, Hyung didn't hide anything, so he said that his girlfriend was helping him with it. The chairwoman just started to glow. She said that he exceeded all expectations. She even worried about it because she definitely doesn't have time for lectures, and his girlfriend is probably very smart. Of course, he knew that Kim Yoo-young's mind wasn't something that could be studied, but her character left much to be desired. At the same time, the chairwoman asked her student if he was really going to the dungeon again. He said it was true because he would like to test his skills. But this time, Chairwoman B wasn't convinced. She was sure that a lower ranked dungeon would be up to him, so she just wished him luck. He thought that a dungeon of the highest rank would certainly be perfect, but he had to stay cool. But would he really be able to do it? Because his C-rank enemy, in the past, he definitely would never have defeated this monster alone, but will he be able to win this time? He understood that the preparation was serious, there was only a fight ahead. He patted himself on the cheeks and said that he could do it. As soon as he got to his friend Lee Yising, he noticed that he had bags under his eyes and hadn't slept for many nights, but he was still holding an object that looked like a small piece of candy in his hands. Hyung asked her if it was hard because it's a potion that increased mana. He asked if he could give it a try. As soon as the permission was granted, he consumed a potion that increased his mana. It was at this point that the stats were increased by 15, just a wonderful effect, so excellent that this bitter pill was like a lollipop. Everyone knew that alchemy was a very complex science. The effect of the same potion could change depending on the skills of the alchemist. If he had given the ingredients to someone else and asked them to do something like that, they would have brought him a stat boost of 1 or 2, but not 15. Hyung said that he had already warned Lee Yisun that he had a talent. But even now, Lee Yisun was sure that it was all thanks to our hero. He said thank you to him. But even so, the main character said that he should be the one to thank Lee Yisun, because it was he who did his best for the benefit of science, so he just asked him to rest, because it seems that he slept very badly in recent days. He rubbed his eyes and said that of course it is, so if our protagonist needs anything, then let him call. This was the end of the training, because tomorrow he would crush that very boss. Hell, on the other hand, had a premonition that they would have to wait for guests today. All this she told her dog, Garm. This point was only 9 days away, but our hero was already standing in front of the dungeon gate. He used the Valkyrie Master Ring, the Valkyrie Apprentice Pendant, and the Valkyrie Apprentice Earring. He took 3 whole Valkyrie Apprentice items, so he got the passive skill, Mana Theft. He thought that this equipment would be enough. After all, he felt great. It was at this moment that he asked the security guard's permission and also stepped forward. As soon as he entered the dungeon, the system moved the user to a certain place, or rather to the land of the dead, just like that time. This time, he already landed on his feet, they just fell. Last time, he didn't understand, but all this bad energy around him belonged to the same boss, so if he destroyed it, then he would be able to meet Helga again. It was at this moment that he had an incredible number of questions for all the inhabitants, for all the gods. It was at this moment that he used the same barrier that his teacher taught him, and also remembered his words, something he wanted to teach him with combat magic, because the hybrid position itself is important, in which he can combine magic with martial arts. But right up to that point, no one was able to do this because long distance is not suitable for the magic class, short distance is not enough for the martial arts class. This is kind of going to be the middle position, which neither of the two directions is special point. She pointed her finger right at him and said that if they were talking about the main protagonist, then it's a completely different matter point. It was at this point that our hero started receiving messages that he started hitting all the monsters all around him, and the guard was waiting for him at the entrance. He knew that someone was near him because he hadn't heard that anyone else would come here besides him. A car pulled up, and a certain girl stepped out from behind it. They knew each other. Her name was Youngju. Most likely, the guard and she haven't seen each other for a long time, so they started to get to know each other about their cases. She said that she was dealing with her guild along the way, and I wanted to see them, the Lotus Guild, but I had to come here where there was a guard because the guild itself did not find him. The guard realized that it was all nonsense, because after graduating from the university, she had not heard from him, so he also decided to lie that he was happy to see her. He realized that he would not have come all this way just to say hello, so at that moment Youngju came to the dungeon and asked why he was following him. Dungeon asked him why he was following him. The guard said she should know about it. The girl continued to question the security guard, saying that this is not his jurisdiction, because really he was demoted. But as soon as she said this, she admitted that she was really curious about something, because she had heard about the signs of Chairman Yu Seung-Seung's illness. Was it all true? The guard became very serious. He said that this was certainly not true. Where did he even hear about it? The girl said that there was definitely a lot around the ears, because even the guard understood that their guild was full of this. She meant information, as well as very sensitive ears that can constantly hear what should not be heard. Most likely, the guard thought that Tanya was implying that she had planted a spy on them, so the guard said thank you for letting her know, because thanks to her, he would have a lot of work to do when he returned. The girl could not understand, because really this is all, because it's time for her to go to clean up, so at the same time he had one last question. She asked him to tell more on the guy who was on her phone. It was our protagonist. She said that it seemed to her that Toot had started dropping by their guild quite often lately, and also seemed to have met the chairman quite often, so he probably should have understood what she was implying. At the same time, he told her not to pry her nose into this matter, but after looking at the guild, this girl decided that she was hoping that they would tell you, because I already know very well how stiff and unyielding the person in front of her is, but in general, I paid her to come there the guild, so she won't pretend. She just took off in the car. The guard knew that the first step was to report this to the chairman while our protagonist was sitting on a mountain of corpses that he himself had created. The dungeon boss that he had to defeat finally appeared in front of him. He couldn't wait for it, so as soon as it appeared in front of him, the one behind Hyung, who had eyes that were waiting for something great, knew that it would be different now, because he would definitely be able to defeat it. The boss at the same time pounced on him, but with one deft jump, our character just took and dodged, after which he began to inflict wounds on the boss thanks to his chains. Apparently, the boss lost his temper, but not our protagonist, because with deft movements he continued to dodge the boss's attacks, which caused even more anger in the one who understood that at one point he would have to counterattack, because he realized that the boss was very confused. Everything would be like as it should be. He wasn't thinking about it. At one point, his chains were used. They pierced through the boss instead of shackling him, but it was definitely not enough, because it was at this moment that some glowing arrows hit the boss directly in the head. Right at that moment, the boss was enraged, his strength was increased, and all of his stats started to increase. Well, of course, the most important thing was that the alert icon came out. After looking at it, it said Seal of Death. This effect was that if the user did not remove this seal within 10 minutes, they would be given an instant death penalty, and the condition was to destroy the boss. Hyung had never thought about this kind of upbringing, never even heard of it. He tried to remove it due to his absolute count, but time after time this mark was superimposed on him. He realized that it was all hell's doing, so he asked her to stop, but of course he didn't have a choice. He had to finish off that boss as soon as possible. He wanted to attack him, but the boss just started running away. He even started smiling, because he understood that our character had a mark on him. He mocked him, because he just decided to drag out the fight. It was at this moment that the main character decided that it was necessary to deliver such a powerful blow that he simply could not avoid it. But the boss used a strange ability that did not give our hero the opportunity to breathe. He felt fear. Of course, he tried to do something, but as soon as he got hit, the fear was dispelled. Even the penalty for instant death remained 7 minutes. He understood that the boss is not able to use the effects of skills several times. He was not sure, because the boss will be able to stop him again if you use light, because in the end it will simply spend mana and will be unarmed. In that case, if you think about it, once he was hit in his eyes, then the boss's vision should have worsened. So first you need to completely turn off the light to the boss who was standing in front of him. He used a certain ability that increased his agility. his speed, and after a few seconds he cancelled it. The boss of course thought that it would be necessary to retreat, so he moved back a little, but our protagonist stopped and asked, because did the boss really think that he would just rush at him? He just wanted to use a certain ability that immediately blinded the boss. His chains began to pierce the entire body of the boss. He began to scream. Many mobs began to approach him, but it was still too late because the sacrifice effect worked, and since the dead were discovered, this ability went into attack mode, the Court of Light, which was used to attack the enemy. She started destroying all the monsters in seconds. Before the end of the instant death effect, at first there was a lot left, but then the seconds began to flow too quickly. There were 9, 8, 7, 6 seconds left, but after some time he still succeeded. The boss was destroyed. He received the title Endured the First Suffering. Hell laughed, because she knew that the choice was his. It was no accident that she asked him to come to her, because she would be waiting for him in her temple. Of course, as soon as the boss was destroyed, it was not without rewards, because not only was the seal removed, but also 3,000 experience points were obtained, the core of the boss itself, as well as shadow armor. It increased its level by as much as 3 units. As soon as the user's proficiency check started, a notification was displayed that Temple of Hell was summoning its user. Of course, no one could refuse such an offer, because after a moment our protagonist was standing in front of the temple itself, where he was met by an incredibly aggressive beast. He ran straight at him, opened his mouth, but at the same moment Hell ordered him to accompany the guest. The dog calmed down at the same time, and I began to lead him on the right path. Hyung was glad that he was finally where he'd wanted to be for a long time. At the same time, as soon as he stepped on the threshold of the temple, he greeted the deity. She, in turn, admitted that she did not expect him to cope, but as soon as she fluttered directly to him, she decided to congratulate him, the enemy of evil. She said that he coped perfectly with her test. But the only question that gnawed at our protagonist was only that, after all, why did he get the Nornir system? Why did he have to go through all this in the first place? What was the real reason? But the only thing Hell said was that it was all for the sake of making him an opponent of evil. Hyung obviously didn't understand any of her words, so he asked another question, because why him? But Hell once again replied that this is fate, because the enemy of Ace, the one who will kill Odin, is exactly what Loki wants, as well as all of them. The main character could not understand, because why did it even need to kill Odin? But most of them said that they didn't need to understand, because they were just counting on him to understand, because he must feel some kind of injustice. But at the same time I put my finger to his lips, making it clear that he should be quiet for a while. She said that the reason why a person is forced to play by the rules of the gods is incomprehensible to his mind, so she asked him to remember that this is not just about the gods, but the whole world is on the verge of an apocalypse, very much wants to take over everything, so to prevent him, they need his power. She pushed him aside, so that he was surrounded by the black aura that was Hell's. He wanted to ask a few more questions, but it only said that he needed to get stronger as soon as the next time they met. That was the only way he could help them. As soon as he left, Hell became very uncomfortable. Her eyes changed. She began to ask questions to some creature who, according to her, was watching them, even though she did not invite anyone to her house. At the same time, as soon as our protagonist woke up near that dungeon, he was very upset, because he had even more questions that no one could answer. Sure enough, he got the gift that Hell promised to give him, and he got the passive skill, Hell's Protection. Especially with this skill was that all abnormal state users will be removed. At this point, as soon as our character has viewed the description of the new skill, we are again transported to the realm of the dead, where Helga is having a dialogue with someone. She leads him with a certain light, from which a voice is spoken, which says that he learned about their meeting, Hell along with our hero. He couldn't help himself, and he also asked her what it would be like to meet our main character in person. Hell, in turn, said that there was no need to jump to conclusions, because he had only taken the first step. We see the outline of that voice that said that one. Even he noticed that she liked the guy. Hell laughed and said that she would admit that he had exceeded her expectations, because he had managed to pass the test and appear before her. Everything Ono experienced was quite a pleasant misunderstanding. As soon as she said this, the other world said that he even somehow felt calmer in his heart. But why did he come there? Because Hell was sure that Tom had something else to say. We will find out the name of this voice. It was Mimir. He, in turn, said that he did not understand what he was talking about, so Hell asked him with a more aggressive intonation, how long will he play the fool? Because the cunning under the guise of a simpleton, this reminds her of her older brother, because the enemy's weak principle has been changed. Did he think she wouldn't notice? After all, if this was the case, then she was very sorry, because now he could not be called a giant of wisdom. It was very annoying. But Mimir was told that he shouldn't get too excited, because he understands that Hell can't be fooled so easily. Hell in turn said that she was not finished. She decided to ask about the left eye of our main protagonist, because as far as we know. But Odin dedicated the eye to the source of wisdom. Won't Mimir tell her what kind of plan they have together with her brother? But Mimir only asked him to ask, because he would like to tell, but it's too early, such is fate. Hell did not press him for anything because she was already used to waiting, but she would not sit idly by because the enemy of evil is still weak. And if you believe the prophecy, then he will face too many trials, he will need a guide, someone who will always show him the right path, even if this path is difficult, full of dangers. It was at this moment that she took out a certain sphere and launched it into the air. In front of our face, the situation that was 7 days before entering Mill's Academy. Many people were walking around our character, but he looked incredibly puzzled. Was something really going on? After all, if not, then they need to go further shopping. However, we understand that our protagonist was actually worried about something, because if the concern can be considered that after all the hemorrhoids, there were only more questions. But although there are still some catches, because all the abnormal conditions were removed from him, he understood that he still has several skills with a rank yes. But what does that even mean? After all, in the system that he had before, there were no such ranks at all. Is it really out of specification? In other words, the skills of a given rank go beyond its past system. And since the other skills are so cool, then the absolute god's eye must be the same. The opponents of the gods of Asura stuffed him with all this for a reason. Because the one who kills Odin, this is what Loki wants, and also these are the words that were in his head all this time. Well, by this time he noticed that the person in front of him was choosing a weapon for him. It was a dagger that cost more than 300 million over there. He was shocked, because just giving away such a huge amount of money for a normal mana knife was too strange. After all, why spend a fortune on an item that you would throw away anyway? Well, as soon as he wanted to address the girl who was standing in front of him, she said that the academy where he enters mainly presents such goods, but the quality of equipment for freshmen does not cease to be desired. All you need to do is make sure that they can buy sacred equipment. So at the same time, she opened the list, which was so huge that it caused some fear in our protagonist. Standing in front of him was a girl named Park Hana, who was a member of the Lotus Guild, and the chairman wanted to give Hyung a gift in honor of entering the academy. He remembered this exact moment when she said that she would need to take some time off. He thought it would be just for a little while, thought it would be like a couple of miracle medicines or artifacts, even though the Lotus Guild is on a completely different level. She said that they still needed to buy some armor, but he said that there was no need, because he already had a set of shadow armor that was B class. He understood that protective equipment of this class was not the best to find, especially when obtaining this armor. And also when he puts it on, he will get the skill concealment, because if they give such a rare ability, then it is actually excellent armor. The girl heard his thoughts out loud, so he said that if he needed such an artifact, then every raider would want it. It would be difficult to get it. But our protagonist said that he just said it, asked us not to think about it. And besides, there are not many people who study concealment among the raiders. He knew that such things can be found in dungeons, and even if you are very lucky. The girl said that everything he said was true. In their country, the cover-up is only possessed by her older brother, manager Park Sung-hee. Didn't he know about it? Of course, this gave him a huge shock, because he could not believe that the guard had sisters. He could not believe it. He was in complete shock, so at the same time he had a resonance with the user, he began to feel something strange. Lights appeared around. Right, what a rainbow of treasures. So he started running after them, running where no one could believe that it was possible to run. Because one property that the eye of the absolute god possessed was that it could, or rather, look through a complex vision and recognize the truth. The lowest skill of the absolutely poor eye, recognition, was discovered. This skill allowed you to recognize an unknown object, and also ignored the abilities of concealment and illusions. The system he got also activated this skill, activated the recognition skill. But at the same moment, as soon as our hero received this skill, we are transferred to someone's duel. Two guys are fighting, but one of course is much stronger. He acts with perfect movements, so in a second the duel was over. This guy had a strange kind of eyes, and also white hair. His name was Hon. It was he who came out the winner. Many who watched this fight and said that the skill of this guy is simply amazing. Because although his opponent had not bad skills, but still decided the difference in talent, it is not for nothing that he is called the raider of the highest class of the new generation. On-Hon was praised by his father, but made it clear that his son should not be happy because he was obliged to win the match. Of course, his son understood all this, so his father told him to do other things, take a shower, and then they had to go get something. At that moment, On-Ho-Hyen felt only discomfort. He felt like a robot. He felt only disgust, which was not the case with him. Did he expect everything to feel like this wasn't the writer he wanted to be? And at what point did everything change? This brings us back to our character, who has received a new item called Misteltane. His oddity was that his class was undefined. Because there was a possible development, it was the mistletoe branch that killed Odin's son, Balder. It grows with the user and has an unknown amount of mana. Our character can gain little perception when using it. At the moment, this skill had a rank, which allowed one to analyze the nature of mana, which increased the sensitivity to it. Of course, this all turned out to be another joke of the new system. But at the same time, I felt something strange. Behind him was On-Hona in a hood, who came with his father to buy new items. He couldn't understand why his father would buy so many items. But my father only replied that it was all for his own development, because the future best raider of the highest rank cannot save money on equipment. Anho Hyan wanted to tell him that they still had to pay their mother's hospital bills for this month, but his father became incredibly rude at the same time. He told him to keep quiet, because he would decide how to deal with all this, and his son would only have to train. Anho Hyan's only thought was that he didn't understand what he was doing at all, why everyone was looking at him like that. After all, what kind of life did he dream of? He felt like a monkey in a zoo cage that everyone was looking at. One day, when he broke his defense ability, his mother did not stop stroking his head, and also smiled. He realized then that he wanted to become a trader. He was a light in the pitch dark, but his father quickly found his ability's correct application. Right now, he's more of a robot than a human, just a tool of his father's. Will he even be able to stay in the academy for 3 years? But as soon as he thought about it, all the staff who were in the store were informed that they had filed about a dungeon rift that caused dangerous monsters to get out on the street. They were asked to remain calm, as the association had already dispatched raiders. Anhona couldn't believe that there were monsters in the city at all, and the rift appeared too randomly. But as soon as he thought about it, his father told him not to stand still, because his son is a genius who will hold the whole of South Korea in his fist. He said that if he got any injuries at all, then his position in the academy would be shaken, and he wouldn't gain anything by intervening. Anho Hyan knew that his father was right, because the traders of the association would deal with the monsters, but what would happen to the civilians in general? What would happen to them before the association arrived? An Hoyang realized that this was his chance, so at that very moment, he decided to prove to himself that he was a real raider. His father had asked him to wait, to come back, but he was too quick. He just wanted to make sure that he had chosen the right path, or it was all a mistake. As soon as he reached the place, he noticed the goblins in front of him, before which I could move, because only the eyes can give birth from fear, one movement of the fingers, one short step. None of this worked. He wanted to move, he knew where he was going, but there was nothing he could do about it, because he only dreamed of becoming a trader, and he was afraid of some lower monsters that were coming at him. But at the same time, our main character stood in front of him and asked him, is An Hoyang really in front of him? By this point, we can understand that our chief recently bought money on his personal account that I could not understand why he went in the direction of unidentified objects, and what kind of lumps he had in his hands. He, in turn, understood that in the eyes of outsiders, this thing looked like a normal stone, so he replied that it was nothing special. He thought it would be strange if everyone could see the device of the system, so he said that I think it was also possible not to buy weapons. But still, they were also distracted by the notification that everyone should be running away, because the dungeon was open. As soon as he heard this, the same one flew out of the window, and when he noticed the monsters, he began to destroy them. Hyang thought that there would be a lot less of them, but there were a huge number of them, which might not even be without losses, so he started jumping from side to side, destroying the goblins along the way, and just as he was doing this, he noticed An Hoyang. His cap fell off, which is why our main character, An Hoyang, didn't think to see the guy who was standing in front of him here, even though he was also entering the academy. An Hoyang couldn't understand what he was doing, but our hero told him not to help. An Ho Hyan noticed that Hyang was a goblin flying at him, but our protagonist knew about this, so at the same time he destroyed it. He said that you cannot let the monster get to the residential buildings. How long is An Ho Hyan going to sit at all? Because the monsters are already approaching the houses. Oddly enough, An Hoyang got up from the floor after saying that, and his trembling stopped, because the real rider was standing in front of him. That's what he thought. All he had to do at this moment was save people, just like the person in front of him was doing. As soon as another goblin army appeared, the main character asked if An Hong could use a skill called provocation, because if so, then you need to distract the monsters. He asked them to attract so many that they couldn't miss a single goblin, but they had to provoke as many as possible. An Ho Hyan said that there was no doubt that he had to do what he could, so he activated the Cry of Provocation skill. All monsters within a 50 meters radius would pay attention to him, and the damage from physical magic attacks would be reduced by 30%. All the monsters around him noticed it, and our protagonist understood that the effects of this ability, that is, the Cry of Provocation, were much stronger than the usual skill of provocation. He couldn't even believe An Hoyang could use it right now, several times in a row, although what was there to expect from this genius? But even in spite of everything, our hero managed to become just a B-rank raider. He didn't know what the problem was, whether it was his psychological state or something else, but fame quickly destroys An Hon's personality, which is why he was called a genius with a sad fate. But what difference does it make? Because you can fix his weak character. An Hon is an extremely useful ally. Let his progress serve him goals, otherwise there will be difficulties. It was at this moment that they worked together, destroying the monsters along the way. As soon as it was over, a man who was smoking a cigarette said that if it was all over, then it wasn't very interesting. Park Kyung-hoon, A man from the management staff of the National Raider Association was standing in front of them. After all, did the two who were standing in front of him destroy all the goblins? In the testament that a man with ashen eyes and hair was standing in front of him, could it be Onhone? Of course, he had heard that he was called a genius, but at this age, it was even frightening, because he had just started high school, and the other guy even looked like his age. How did these two people kill so many monsters? Huck asked how he even needed to report this to the management. But that's exactly what Hyung wanted to ask, because even if everyone thinks that the monsters were dealt with by the police, no one will believe that they did it anyway. Park said it was an offense, but our main character said you and I were eyewitnesses, so that would be a different matter. Park once again said that they know that they are equated to state-level bodies, so he can't act within the framework of regulations, so if they don't want attention, they don't need to make noisy battles, they will be given a reward. But even though our guy said to give all the money to Onhone, you just need to keep quiet. All the same, he had enough money from the Lotus, because now that the admission is about to begin, it is better not to shine in public, but to give all the laurels to Onhone. Park asked if he really didn't, but On Hoyoung intervened at the same time, telling you to wait, because it was our character who killed all the monsters. But Hyan replied that he had his own circumstances before entering the academy. He didn't want to catch him in the eyes, obviously. In the past, his martial arts talent was not important, so there was nothing to worry about. But now the situation has changed dramatically. He, or rather his father, does not know that he has changed the class magic. If his plans become known, then there may be unnecessary problems, so it's better to stay in the shadows for sure. Our protagonist's revenge will be cold and quiet. He will become so strong that even the power of his father will not help. He will wait for the right moment and deliver a fatal blow. On Hoyoung couldn't understand what he needed to do, because he definitely couldn't do it alone. You can't send yourself the achievements of others, but you can help your mother with money. He just wanted to become a trader that she would be proud of, but if he missed the moment and his mother would not be able to do it at all, stand it. Our main character understood that On Hoyoung wasn't thinking about pride, because there was too much sadness in his eyes. What was the reason for his doubts? Is there really something he should help with the choice? At that moment, he turned to On Hone and told him to think carefully, because his actions were just as important as his own. After all, if it wasn't for his determination, then one of them would definitely break up in life, so everything will be fair. On Ho Hyan said that the person, or rather the guy in front of him, was right, because there was nothing to think about. Because there was no point in dreaming if he lost a loved one for his uncertainty, so he said that he would definitely pay off our protagonist someday. Park himself noticed that he was quite skilled in dealing with people. He was definitely not a simple guy, so Park said that the contract would be valid. He did everything as they asked. On Hone, as soon as our hero started walking away, started shouting at him, asking him to tell his name. But our protagonist just smiled and told him not to worry, because he will soon find out too. They are going to the academy, so I will see you often. On Hoyoung just couldn't believe that no one was the same age, so that's how his training for the academy ended. It was already the day of admission, everyone was worried, everyone was waiting for something, and they also couldn't calm down, because they saw a martial arts class genius. They thought On Hoyoung was just from another planet. They also noticed a girl named Seo-in-a. Hyung knew that she was already drawing the eyes of others, because in the future, her name would be at the top of the list of raiders. The main character knew that if he could win Seo and Yu over to his side, then there would be more aces up his sleeve. But the difficulty was that she was a very difficult case, because it was better not to overdo it now. He already has On Ho Young, Yu Seung Yoon, and Lee Yisun. While he was in a pensive state, Kim Yoo-young started yelling at him, saying that that girl was quite beautiful and all, but why would he, our hero, need to stare at me? Our hero could not believe that his girlfriend thought so, was saying something at all. These are the words that the same girl, So-in, heard. Well, as soon as they stopped talking, the greeting of everyone entering the new academy began. In front of them was the director, Gu Chaein. Hyung remembered that face, because the thing that he was going to have to stop had finally started, and that was exactly what this director's face looked like at that moment. He looked at his girlfriend and remembered the most terrible images that were in front of his face as his girlfriend died. He immediately turned to Kim Yoo-young, telling her to be prepared for anything that might happen at the academy. Kim just smiled and asked, because for some reason they are so baked, she asked him not to worry because she can handle it. But Hyun just kept thinking that after Kim Yoo-young's admission in the past, she was ranked 3rd in the mage rankings, but this time, she can't be allowed to die. The director says that as the ceremony begins, he understands that they are not interested in the official speech, because everyone already knows that something special has been prepared for the opening ceremony. He made a face as if he had expected this all his life, clapped his hands and said that everyone was right, because now the game starts, in which people have to steal the name tags of their new comrades. Let the hunt begin. This hunt consisted of new students stealing each other's badges. Magic circles began to appear under them, and Kim was so scared that she almost fell to the floor, so our hero had to pick her up so that she did not collapse to the ground. We are transported back to the same security guard who remembered that today was the day when the chairman's student will enter the academy. The chairwoman was also surprised. She was surprised that the time passed so quickly, because she wanted to have time to wish him good luck before entering, but she couldn't. Is it really going to last 3 days again this time? The guard understood that she meant hunting, so he confirmed her words, saying that it would take place in subspace. The chairwoman was sorry that she wouldn't be able to contact her disciple, but the guard confessed that yesterday he knew that this was probably going to happen, so yesterday he sent a message for her, and of course Hyung answered them. As soon as everyone fell into the new space, he tried to pick up his girlfriend, who accurately hit the ground well. But as soon as they landed, he noticed the same girl next to him who had black hair and hazel eyes. He remembered that her predisposition to magic would be 92%. It would definitely change the current view of the magic class, because in front of him was a future raider of the highest rank, who would become a follower of his teacher. We go back again, where we realize that Yu Seung-yoon doesn't care about his student at all while Sung-in was standing in front of him. In front of us is the central office of the academy that our character, Mills, enters. There, most likely, the employees are discussing the fact that they received a lot of talented students this year. The most promising one was An Ho-young, also known abroad, Seo-in-a, Kim Yu-young, Lee Sa-yuk. The predisposition to magic of each of them is about 90%. And the profiles of students who decided to change their direction have not yet been updated. The director said that the designer was enough, because if they decided to change the class now, then everything was clear, because such students do not study with them for a long time. In the domain of the others, On Hon, the director with a very strange face said that the raiders of average talent become like servants for real geniuses. That's why they should give them a chance. Sometimes the awakened, faced with a deadly danger, get a lucky chance, reawakening. The Academy always wants to make one a rank raider, even if it requires sacrificing 100 lower ranked raiders. The raiders must constantly prove themselves, and those who have fallen are obviously capable of doing so. The task of the director is that he must find the jade, to which he will devote himself. There was no more time to draw it out. The field where the novice hunt takes place is created with the help of subspace magic, time stops inside it, and spatial restrictions are removed. Here is something that is really impossible in reality. Every year about 5% of applicants fail in hunting. That's how difficult this tapey is. It makes you understand the limit of your own capabilities. So it was definitely impossible to relax, because Soina was standing in front of him, and the director appeared on the screen. He said that he wanted to explain these are the rules of hunting. He said that this space is designed in such a way that it allows you to use only skills up to C rank. For each badge removed, they are awarded points. Because if students select a beginner's badge, he gets 10,000 points, and if a beginner selects, he gets 100,000 points. He was saying that since points are used in all places in the academy, the more they are, the better. Our protagonist understood that since you can only use C rank skills and lower, then his real speed chain is blocked, but nothing was said about unique skills. The headmaster also said that they had lowered the power of their spells to 10% for greater safety, so he asked them not to worry and also not to get hurt. The main character understood that the director was talking complete heresy, because he did not even say about unique skills, as well as about the limitation of characteristics. He wanted to weed out more and more those who are weak, as well as identify the most talented. It was at this point that our hero asked Kim to follow him, because they would have to spend 3 days there, and the first thing they had to do was find shelter. It is in this space that there are different surprise zones, traps, and a source of healing, a forest of nightmares, an ecosystem that provides food, shelter, and so on. Well, of course, the most important thing was that in order to survive, first of all it was necessary to hide, because with a strong point it is much easier to prepare for battle. At the same time, Kim looked at our hero and asked if they should take the girl who is standing behind her, because she seems to be from the magic class, and it would be better if there were one more person in the team. At the same time, Hyun couldn't understand why his girlfriend would say sensible things at crucial moments, because to be honest, teaming up with Sonya would be the most profitable thing. But the variable that can't be calculated, he once read about an incident involving her. It was reported that she lost her mind and went on a rampage and put a huge number of people in danger. Such a decision couldn't be made in a hurry. So I asked Yujin if she was really sure that the girl behind them wouldn't betray them, and it was clear from the look in that girl's eyes that even she doesn't trust them. But all Yujin said was that she looked a lot like him when she was a kid, so he went to her place and asked her if she wanted to make a team, since she was all the guys who were behind her in the same team. Kim said that they had a lot of newbies in this hunt. The situation was so-so, but Mac was easier to fight in a team. But Seo-in only said that the matter should be postponed, because at the same time, they were joined by 2 people who talked about how their piggy banks would be filled with points this year. One girl who was paired with this guy said that she feels 2 people, but she can't feel the guy at all. Our hero of course remembered them, that they are good, but Kim said that they should just run away, because everyone was from the martial arts class, but the main thing the protagonist said was that they can't escape, they will have to catch them. He remembered that the girl who sensed their presence had an interesting ability that could fix a target at a distance of 300 kilometers. This ability was called Search. He understood that if it was not removed now, then serious problems would definitely start later. The guy who was older than our newcomers said that it was great that they met newbies, because they will be able to gain points and eat to the brim. But the girl asked not to lose vigilance, because the handsome man who stood behind them was definitely not easy. The guy said that he didn't care, because all he saw in front of him was that they were newbies, especially since it wasn't the first time they were already participating in a hunt. He shouted that he would deal with him once and for all. But as soon as he swung with his sword, while wanting to injure our protagonist, Hyung just went back. The girl began to say that she understood that there was something wrong with this guy, but the main character said that he hadn't swung anything at him for a long time. The high school student couldn't believe it. He thought it was just an accident, because he can't help but know the face of a novice who is able to but return from his blade, so he tried again. Then again, but still couldn't touch it, so at one point our hero just took at the sword with his own hands and split in half. He asked him how he even survived with such a carcass. In an instant, Les was broken thanks to a single squeeze. Hyung stood over him and said that he wouldn't hurt him if someone gave him their badge. The high school student had 3 seconds. The high school student was so scared, because it was impossible in his opinion that some youngster was able to just take and break his sword and also looked at him with such eyes. Hyung said that he gave him an opportunity, but he missed it. More than 3 seconds passed, so at the same time a blow was struck, and the contestant was. All the instructors were happy, because finally there was an invader among the newcomers. It was Hyung who first earned 100,000 points, but no one could believe it, because really everything was right. No one even knew his name, but the headmaster just smiled and kept saying Hyung's name. Most likely, he was interested in him, but while he said his name, the girl shouted, and also asked to tell who the person in front of them was. In turn, Hyung just ignored this girl and told Kim Yoo-young to cook, because now she will have to work. He sent her an invitation, let her accept it. Yoo-jun, on the other hand, couldn't believe that her childhood friend was so strong before. Well, the only thing that the girl who opposed them thought was that her partner had ruined everything, because even if our protagonist wasn't such a monster, then a fight against 3 was too risky. She decided that she would first take one of them and immediately run away. She went to Kim. Our hero appreciated this, because it was a good decision, because Kwon Seoyeol, the girl who went against them, was thinking of creating chaos suddenly so as to open a corridor for retreat. For her this was the best option. But this tactic would only work if Kim Yoo-young was an ordinary person, but she was an excellent magician, so she decided to use binding and then a barrier to hide from the daggers that flew straight at her. Hyung, on the other hand, said that he couldn't handle a student of the academy, so he wanted to help, but at the same time, he heard that the girl who had a 92% magic aptitude started using the Elfheim sword, another spell, and these swords immediately pierced Kwon Seoyeol. It was at this moment that that girl realized that there were 3 real monsters standing in front of her. However, even so, the system decided to count that same genius student only 50,000 points, because due to the contribution of Yoo-jun, she received the same 50,000 points for her share. Seoyeon even asked Kim if she had interfered with her capture, but Eugene was thrilled because she helped her, and Seoyeon asked if the offer they offered her was still valid. Of course, our character thought that they should have slightly corrected the assessment of Seoyeon's character, because she was quiet and distrustful, and also very curious. At the same time, a team of 3 people was formed, the leader of which was our protagonist. At the same time, we see that many have gone to the Forest of Nightmares, the neighborhood of the shelter. Many students wanted to track down their targets, so they followed the footsteps that were left on the ground. The tracks should definitely lead to the shelter. The hunt will last 3 days. Even this rabid troika will not be able to hide until it ends. Everyone had in mind just the very newcomers who were our heroes. They thought it was a good time to meet them face to face, but as soon as they thought about it, one of their group was knocked out. Using a spell, it was Yoo-jun, who as soon as they noticed, immediately started to chase. She noticed that there were 5 people there, but everything was going like clockwork, so she started to warm up their interest, trying to laugh at them, saying that it was quite fair to attack a lot of one person. We are transported back a bit to the past, where our protagonist dictated the plan that the shelter is a safe place. But they will definitely not be able to sit there, because they need to get food and earn points, because now they will hunt students, and it was for this purpose that Kim Yoo-young lured enemies until a message appeared that they are far away from it as a living creature with anomalous. She realized that she was able to trap the pups when Hyung was running out, so she already wanted to rely on him for the rest, because if he didn't do it alone, then she would definitely beat him. But a group of students were in the area of spore-like paralyzing mushrooms. He recalled, approached his alchemist, who asked how to actually deal with paralyzing mushrooms during hunting. That tree sap is best suited. It can be found in the Forest of Nightmares, although only he can be cured by it, because the paralysis itself could not be removed. Alchemy wanted to say something else, but our main character said it would be enough. Many students noticed that they were notified that they had entered the area of spore-like paralyzing creeps. They thought that it was dangerous there, that they needed to return, but of course one of them was burning with anger and asked them, after all, do they really offer you to surrender? His teammates were saying that they needed to go back, because if something went wrong, he would be finished right away. They wanted to end up chasing him. But most likely the captain was saying that the girl who was in front of him, or rather running away from them, had finished off their Kim Sung-hoon, so they would have to do it. He definitely needed to catch up with her, but his friend kept insisting that they needed to rest, because if they were paralyzed, then everything else would be meaningless. But the radio with a paralysis of about 50 meters, that girl would also be hooked, so he ordered Park Sung-hak to protect them, also stay in place, and the rest of them we must go forward. The same guy who was supposed to be the head of the same squad only thought that the main character would not be able to deceive him, because he thought that Hyung just made a bait out of his gang to drive them into a trap and attack. But he also thought that he underestimated him. He thought that she'll be fine, so at this point, until they caught up with Kim Yoo-young-ah and noticed her, they said that there was no reason to run away like that. Kim, in turn, smiled and said that they were finished, so a lot of students came at her with daggers, who were aggressive. Yoojin smiled once again and shot her magic directly at the paralyzing mushrooms that exploded. The effect was that all living creatures within a 50 meters radius were paralyzed for 2 hours. While she was doing this, she remembered what our friend had told her recently. They were at a certain tree, but Kim herself didn't understand why they came there, because she only saw trees. Hyung, in turn, took out a certain ampoule and said that they were in place. He began to collect juice from the tree. While he was doing this, Seoin asked if the conditions for the martial arts class had been improved, since the ability to use C-rank skills and below was a serious limitation for mages. But it was at this point that the main character said that for students with good physical fitness, it doesn't matter. Kim also started complaining, saying that all her attack skills were blocked. It was good to be able to use a unique skill. After all, only basic abilities remained. What kind of shit was that? But our protagonist said to use the available arsenal. Does he have the replacement skill? Kim cheered up. She said that there was no strange opinion here, because she was his teacher. Of course this skill is there. Seoin, on the other hand, didn't understand Hyung's plan, because this skill is used to quickly change locations, so why would they need it at that moment? But all Hyung had said was that if you combined ash tree sap with replacement skills, you could come up with interesting manipulations. So as soon as Hyung noticed that there was an explosion, he knew that it was time for him to go. The students shouted that the girl was crazy. She blew up mushrooms, but the skill was not used. Kim apologized because she just played her role. Nothing personal. It was the turn of our main character, who as soon as he appeared, immediately loaded his shoe on one of the students. The students couldn't move because they couldn't believe that everything would always be as he ordered. Because what kind of idiot would jump paralyzing mushrooms at all? Because he left his fighter outside? Because when the action of the mushrooms ends, they will all die. Our hero, in turn, apologized to him and said that he would not come. The student thought that this was all a lie, that he was trying to deceive him, but just at that moment, a shrill cry was heard from the forest, and then a notification was displayed that the participant Park Sung-hak was eliminated. Of course, he was defeated by Seoina from the team of our main protagonist, earning 100,000 points. That was why Hyung was now standing in front of the student and talking about how the student had warned him not to wait for help. The disciple lost his temper. He started saying that whatever it was, but within 2 hours they will be in the same position, because as soon as the paralysis subsides, he will overcome ours with his bare hands. But the only questions that our hero asked was about what kind of fright he took that they were in the same position. It was at this point that the student noticed that Hyun could move, and he said that it was unthinkable, but it was possible. But all claims should be directed to God, because the protection of Hyun of our protagonist from all abnormal states. At the same time, he got close, so I hit him so hard with my boot that the contestant was eliminated, and Oh Jin-hak was eliminated. All the students were shocked, but as soon as our Hyun looked at them, they started shouting that they were giving up. But notification came after notification that the team of our main character destroyed the students one by one. Just the rookie rating was taken by all the members of their team, and the second place was shared by Kim along with a different one. No one could believe it. But of course it was true that Kim continued to drink the tree's sap, because as soon as she drank it, I became much better. Seoin even offered to move out. As soon as they got up from their seats, Seoin asked if Hyung really knew so much of magic, since even the textbooks didn't write about this method of using substitution. But Kim Lee replied that they were similar to this, because he had only changed directions 3 months ago and she had helped with the theory. Seoin was surprised, because did our protagonists really want to get into a martial arts class in the first place? Kim Yoo-young seemed to have found an incredible topic for conversation. She began to pass off information for information. They say that our hero was recently obsessed with the warrior class, but did not show interest in magic at all. She was more surprised that her friend found out about ash juice. Where did he get this information at all? At the same time, as soon as the two girls approached the place, they noticed the main character, who was leaning on a tree and was glad that they were all right. Yu-young started to praise Hyung for the tactics he came up with. She was talking about how their blockhead finally showed some intelligence, but of course she got a proper punishment for it. He started to squeeze her cheeks. While Seoin was looking at all of this, she couldn't believe that there was any balance in front of her. After all, he was quite smart and cute. But as soon as she took a closer look at him, she blushed and realized that she wasn't really thinking about that because she should be more careful. As soon as they entered the shelter, our protagonist started cooking something. So-ying wondered what he was doing here. But he replied that it was just an ordinary energy recovery potion that he had learned from a friend who was definitely not happy that his materials were so easily damaged. And there were several hundred failures that preceded his success. Kim started to laugh because she didn't know that her childhood friend had a lot of friends. But Hyung just said that she didn't have any friends either, which hurt her a lot. Seoin sat next to our hero and said that he was incredible here because I would never have thought that they were not the same age. She had a feeling that he had passed 10 years more than them. Hyun was surprised at this because she was always so perceptive, because even the time was right. But Kim got up at the same time and said that it was time for them to stop chatting, because if they want to continue hunting, then they need to eat. She said that Chef Kim Yu-young would quickly cook them something. But the only one who refused was our main character, who wanted to eat fruit instead its degrees. Of course, they had an argument. They even remembered that at one point she did not get cookies, which turned out to be some kind of purple color. At first, Seoin even thought that she added jam, but Hyun replied that he just couldn't cook like him. Seoin paused for a moment and said that since she could cook, should they do something? Our protagonist asked her if she really cooks so well, to which Seoin replied that when she lived with her grandmother, she had to cook every day, so at the same time, she tied up her hair and started cooking. Our hero understood that little was known about her family, because if she says that she lived with her grandmother, then where were her parents? It was at this point that her cooking was ready. Everyone was delighted with it. Everyone said it was delicious. And Hyung said that he didn't think he could eat high quality food in such conditions, which definitely made Seoin blush. She hadn't had this feeling in a long time. Of course, all their actions were monitored by the instructors, who did not expect that the genius On Hone, who had high hopes, was only in the 4th ranking. They were even surprised that the first 2 places were delayed by magicians, that they thought that there was an error in the system, or there was another explanation for it. The headmaster thought that this was simply unthinkable. After all, only the martial arts class raiders could achieve such results. What they are now seeing is that a group that consisted of 3 mages crushed everyone and broke out in front. At the same time, he asked instructor Kim Ji-young to display an image from the fields of paralyzing mushrooms on the screen, so at that moment, he noticed that the solution, as well as skills and absolutely calmness, can disable a raider warrior. He did not even believe that this is an ordinary guy mage. But what is even more difficult to believe is that he was just a rookie. Information about him was hidden, the focus too. They got the student's profile, but they didn't know if it was all correct. The director asked what does that mean by not sure. What was the problem at all? So at this point, this instructor handed a certain paper to the director and said that the predisposition to magic of our protagonist is 97%. The headmaster started shouting about how great it was. Now he wanted to personally check out what Hyung was made of, so all the instructors realized that they now needed to personally step in to watch the competition. They decided to add to the entertainment, so one of the instructors said that he would prepare everything in a short time. The team of our hero continued to earn points. They even have a little more than 1 million. The first place was definitely careless, but was it necessary to leave the shelter? Our hero said that of course they have no other choice, because no one else will come to the Forest of Nightmares, and Seoin supported him because you need to take it into your own hands to earn points. Kim didn't want to do this, she just wanted to get some rest, but still decided to ask what the record was among the newcomers. Seoin replied that the current record was 1,140,000 points, so it was at this point that Hyun realized that Seoin was not only incredibly curious and greedy, but also knew a lot of things. They wanted to go, but at the same moment they realized that something was coming. A blow was approaching them. Something greatly exceeded the power of C rank. An alert appeared that an unstable connection to space was obtained. The restrictions imposed on the participants were lifted. Everyone was excited, because did our protagonist get hurt? And why did the newcomer attack his own comrades? He noticed On Hoyoung standing in front of him, but there was something strange about the sight of him. What was happening to him at all? Couldn't On Hoyoung hear him? Seoin also realized that there was something wrong with the rookie, as if he was being hypnotized, so he realized that it seemed like it was the headmaster's doing, because something like this had already happened in his previous life at the Mills Academy Festival. At the bottom that was supposed to be warm, a flashback for the newly arrived students that still turned into a bloodbath. The cause of the tragedy was Koo Jane's unique brainwashing skill, so after this student's crime was discovered, he was also facing jail time, but even without the public's attention, he still managed to reveal himself. Many students died, Koo Jane was missed, and Kim Yu-young gave up for him. The first thing he understood that On Hone needs to be revived. It was at this point that his new system gave him a new side task, the reward of which was another empty card, and the task was to save the student from a hypnotic trance, which is what allowed our character to dream about another empty card. Hyung realized that if an empty card was involved, then he would try very hard to get it. They wanted to stop him because they wanted to help, but he told them to go as far as possible, and if possible, then earn as many points as possible. Kim was shocked because really our protagonist doesn't know who is standing in front of him, because On Ho Young, who was a martial arts class genius, was standing in front of him. She thought that the main character couldn't handle him. The only thing Hyung did was turn around and ask her if she really thought that. Seoin looked at our protagonist's face and said they were leaving. Kim couldn't figure out what she was doing to them, but after just holding her head, she decided that she would listen because they would think of something with the glasses. But she asked that Hyung just not get hurt. She said that he should do what he wanted, but it was absolutely necessary to return. By this point, On-Hoon had already earned 600,000 points. He still lasted these 2 days. After all, there were still days left, and finally he could rest. He thought that he was giving his best. It would be hard until, but everything is there even with more than his all 3. That our main character is just, of course, he can't lose, because there was still time. He needed to continue, but at the same moment he was contacted by the director, who said that he would be happy if he would do him a little favor. It was at this moment. It was via video link that the director invaded his mind, so after a moment, his mind was taken over, and his goal was of course to chop our hero in half, which was exactly what he was thinking. We are once again transported to the present, where the genius starts using the rank skill, Ultra Instinct. Our hero understood that a few days ago, when they first met, everything was different, but On Hoyoung stood up so strong that he could not even be recognized, because according to his physical abilities, it was definitely him. It was an inconvenient opponent for our protagonist, but it was at this moment that the skill called Wind Reinforcement was activated. Our character's agility immediately increased, which allowed him to go behind his enemy's back. But he was also not amiss, because his body reacted even before he noticed the movement. This innate sense of combat made it clear that it would be damn difficult. Hyung knew that with an absolutely honorable skill, he would have been able to figure it out in no time, but the problem was that they were being watched. It was obvious, because the director was probably grinning nastily while waiting for him to fight On Ho Hyun. So the climax of the hunt should be interesting. If you wanted it to be a show, then so be it. The price will be great. Everyone was shocked. All the instructors said that their eyes seemed to deceive them, because not only does the magician fight as a raider of the class of both arts, but also surpasses his opponent, surpasses the genius On Ho himself. Who was this student anyway? After all, no one could believe that a magician can win in an open battle against a warrior. This is the truth that she realized, and you on the path of magic. But why did he succeed? Did the main character succeed? At the same time, when the fight was coming to an end, Hyung was apologizing to On Hoyoung's body, saying that he didn't want it to come to this, but there was a tough guy in front of him who was getting better quickly, and now he decided to use the color skill Noise Bomb, which obscured the screen. The director was shocked. He started switching channels to make it obvious that the apprentice had cast a spell that blocked the broadcast, a stun bomb. He gripped the remote control and also turned to instructor Kim Seaki, saying that after the hunt is over, as soon as the event is over, our main character should stand in his office. The instructor was shocked to see if Mr. Headmaster himself was rushing things, but the headmaster was so angry that he said that the instructor should have understood that if our protagonist used a flashbang spell when his victory was obvious to everyone, it only meant that he knew how to raise his own price. By this point, as soon as our hero's skill triggered, he looked up at the sky with a very satisfied face and then extended his hand towards the genius. The skill, Absolute Counting, was activated and the brainwashing effect was removed, so the genius looked at our protagonist and said that he was fine, but at the same time he fell down and started writhing in pain. He was actually in pain. Hyung moved closer to On Ho Hyun and asked him to forgive him, because On Ho Hyun was the first to attack him. On Ho Hyun, for his part, couldn't understand why or why he did it. Hyun got up and said it was probably a mind control spell, so On Hoyoung started to remember something. He heard someone's voice, but he didn't remember the face. Most spells of this kind belong to the higher classes, but in subspace there are restrictions on the use of skills from class and below. The hero said that most likely there might have been some problems or someone deliberately tried, because even if the space was buggy, there is no one among the students who could use a class magic so professionally. On Hoyoung guessed that someone might have interfered with the competition, but who was it and why would it do such a thing? To adjust the situation for yourself so that the competition was definitely wrong and unfair. The only thing that our protagonist said, it's definitely not for this, because he is sure that this is some big shot that they cannot get. Once On Hoyoung has studied a bit at the academy, he will understand who the headmaster really is. By this time, the side task was already completed, and the hero received an empty card as a reward. On Hoyoung felt like his body was going to break apart right now, but Hyung didn't get a single scratch at all. Is this really the limit of a guy? He knew he didn't even have anything to say. He was apologizing, but the only thing Hyung said was that if he could move, then he went, wishing Hoyoung good luck for the rest of the hunt. At that moment, On Ho Hyun threw his badge to our hero. Of course, our hero couldn't understand what On Hoyoung did at all, because On Hoyoung should have known that the participants without a badge were flying out. On Hoyoung replied that it didn't matter to him. He had already scored enough points, even if not as much as the protagonist, and besides, he lost in a duel. His badge is Hyung's right. It didn't work out for him right now, but even if it's a small mistake, he will beat him at the festival and return the badge back. At this point, the On-Hone contestant is eliminated, and our main character's team earns another 10,000 points. Now that he had a $10,000 item in his hands, Hyung knew he needed to be bold. However, it was different for him. After all, the martial arts talent that he had been chasing before was now his, not the one who had it since birth. A lot of things had happened to him since returning to the past, but he had never felt so confident before. Everything was just beginning, and for the first time he felt that he was moving forward, that he had chosen the right path, so he realized that he needed to continue making progress. When the 72-hour rookie hunt was over, the results were counted, a new record was set, and the characters received more than 15 million points. They returned to reality, where they were shocked. Everyone looked at the main character while Kim yelled at him that they were the ones who broke the record, but there wasn't enough joy in it, then looked at Seoin, who was also upset they didn't have 1 hour to score 16 million points. Kim realized that the two of them who were standing next to her were completely abnormal. However, be that as it may, with so many points, you can live to the fullest for a while. If you multiply the amount by 10, they will receive it in cash equivalent, so they earned 15,300,000 won, which surprised Kim Yoo-young and Seoin immensely. Hyung said that is first place, and they share the second. Most likely they will even get extra points. Having said this, Kim came to her senses. She began to glow even more because they will be able to earn a whole million more. It turned out that in 3 days they earned almost 25 million. The protagonist told them to quit. Everyone looked at them and considered them crooks. The instructors also expressed their disbelief. Instructor Kim Seok-hee stood in front of them. Everyone immediately said hello, but he said that he and the hero have an important conversation. But in such a crowded place, they can't talk about it. Why don't they move around? The only thing Hyung asked was if it had anything to do with the points earned. The instructor just nodded, which made it clear to the guy that this was actually an important conversation, and he immediately went to get the man. Seoin and Kim couldn't figure out where to go. The hero suggested that they were expected in the director's office. The instructor at the same time picked up that the director of the academy wanted to see the whole group. As soon as they arrived at the office, Hyung noticed that the headmaster himself wasn't there, which annoyed the instructor, so he just told the girls to sit down too. After sitting down on the sofa, the director immediately entered the room. They got up and introduced themselves, but the director said that he already knew. But our main character did not get up and said only that the director was late. He almost fell asleep. Everyone couldn't believe it. Was Hyung crazy? The director, in turn, was very angry, but did not show it. He said that it was actually inconvenient. He needed to prepare for the conversation. Once again, the main protagonist said that now it is inconvenient not for him, but just with the students. After being in subspace for 3 days, they didn't even have time to recover, and they weren't even allowed to shower. From the last nerves, the director held on and did not become aggressive. He said he was being rude. Hyung knew of course that he would behave like this. He didn't even feel sorry for the people in front of him. At this point, the director said that he had a suggestion for them. There was no reason to worry. First of all, he wanted to congratulate them. After all, they took the first 3 places in the ranking of participants, especially Hyung, who gained a foothold in the first position. Our hero said that it was all thanks to the team. He would never have done it alone. This made the director think a little that the boy in front of him is not one of the boastful ones, so he said that he personally watched their actions during the hunt. However, they broke the record that had been set almost since the foundation of the academy, clapping their hands and saying that it was hard to believe. Seoin thanked him, but the only thing Hyung wanted to know was why they were in his office. The director realized that he needed to get down to business, so he said that for their services, he would like to grant a few privileges. The first was that everyone would be given access to the dorm's luxury rooms, and the second was that all 3 of them could be the first to use the academy's reserved attributes, while the third was that if someone was not satisfied with the exam result, they could challenge it with a subsequent transfer. Everyone was delighted with these offers. The director said that after accepting these privileges, they would sign a partnership agreement with the academy, but Hyung refused. He said that the offer is good, but all this can be obtained on their own in a whole month, because skill is valued in mils. Especially, why would they sign a contract? He wanted to take a leaflet to see the contract. He snatched it out of the director's hands and began to read that after signing a contract with the academy, from the moment he started raiding for 5 years, he would give 30% of his income. The main character threw these papers on the table and said that it seems that the director wants to make them plow for the academy like a pack animal. Did he really understand something wrong? The director raised his hands to his face to cover his expression and said that if they thought so, then he does not force anyone to sign the contract because the opinion of each of them is important to him. At this point, not only did Kim refuse, but Soen also refused. The director said several times that he was sorry because this was the only option he could offer them, but advised them to think carefully about these conditions again. Then he looked into the face of our protagonist with his hypnotic eyes, although he was hypnotized to sign the contract, but the patronage of hell saved him. He knew that he hadn't provoked that fat headmaster for nothing. After all, he was the one who used the blank card and the brainwashing skill was learned. The director was shocked, and at that moment our main character got up from his chair and said that it was time to go. Everyone was probably very tired. One by one, the students began to leave the classroom, and the instructor was sweating more and more because he knew that something terrible was about to happen. The director asked the instructor to come out. As soon as the instructor came out, the headmaster started a monologue to himself. He couldn't believe that some youngster could resist his unique ability. He really liked Hyung. But as soon as all the characters went outside, the hero character asked if they were sure about the contract. This offer, which they refused, was quite lucrative. Kim Yoo-young hesitantly said that at first everything seemed very tempting. But after his words, they decided that I would not sign anything, apparently that the director was hoping to catch them on the hook, referring to their youthful naivety. Seoin also said that she was confused by the contract, even thinking that they did the right thing, and other students would be embarrassed by such privileges. The protagonist correctly said that they themselves will earn all these amenities after some time. He looked at Seoin and agreed that it was only fair. She didn't even seem as cold as he remembered her before going back in time. He told everyone that everything was fine because he hoped that they would refuse. Kim made a sinister face at one point, then asked everyone if they thought the director was acting weird. His face twisted so much when they refused him the contract that it was creepy. Seoin also noticed this because there was a serious problem in subspace, but neither the director nor the instructor even mentioned it. The girl asked if he knew anything about the director, and he was surprisingly calm, which is not like a newbie, and when they met, his face was so angry. The second girl picked up the idea of a friend and asked the guy to tell about everything. He replied that it was difficult for him to say anything at the moment, but one thing was certain: no one could be trusted within the walls of Milas, not the headmaster or the instructors. When the girl got closer to him, she asked him if he was trustworthy, but Hyung didn't say anything. The friend added that not only did he look like a sinister psycho, but he also left her alone in the very center of the city. The guy got angry, and here it is, why is she so vindictive? The girl, after these words, attacked him and began to shout about what she had experienced then and that she was not at all vindictive. Holding her head with his hand, he said that they should separate. The sun had already set. The girl agreed. Seoin sadly repeated that they should split up here. They stood awkwardly in front of each other, with Kim watching them in the middle. Wrapping her arms around their necks, she began joking that they had a carrot crush and she wanted to join them. Pushing the girl away, the guy said that the women's dorm is on the left side and the men's dorm is on the right, and it's time for them to rest. Everyone started to go their separate ways. Seoin said goodbye and told him to get a good night's sleep since tomorrow was the first day of school, so he said goodbye and moved on. It had been a long time since he'd been in his room. The musty smell, the creaking floor, and the sorrows of students whose dreams had been shattered by harsh reality. He missed this place so much, he would have to find a proper room after class. He had had enough of the hellish experience of the past. The next morning, he went for a jog in the park, and after he finished, he went home to get ready for class. Friends met. The students of the magic class were greeted by a new instructor, Kim Jin. On the basics of the first adaptation, she hoped that she would work with the guys. The hero didn't remember her very well due to the fact that he had been in a martial arts class before. He didn't know much about this girl. Perhaps she was one of the instructors who would be leaving the academy soon. You can understand them. Most of the awakened ones know that the instructor in Melissa is a hell of a difficult position. Those who still remain in the academy are counting on a significant handout from Q to Jane. The students noticed that today's lesson is not held in a cramped classroom, but in a more spacious room. All because they were going to be testing their mana. Everyone was scared because it was too difficult for the first lesson. A teleport opened behind the woman. It was a cube that our hero had seen before, but the concentration of mana in it is much lower. The woman told the students that the mana room in front of them is a converted mana cube, which is often used in guilds. It is almost impossible for students to handle the mana cube, so the academy converted it into a mana room. You can see that the space in it is divided into several segments. In the first one, the concentration of mana is close to the Earth's atmosphere. The further you go, the stronger the magic pressure will be. Normally, freshmen go as far as the 3rd room and graduates go as far as the 7th. Today they find out what concentration of mana they can withstand. Seo was secretly glad for this room because she would finally be able to test her abilities. The instructor told everyone to shoot at the column and follow her. If something happens, raise their hand. Since the exit from the room is carried out only with the help of the academy instructor, they got down to business. The first room was able to overcome all the students. In the second, some left. In the third, half of the students raised their hands. In every room, more and more people raised their hands. Kim told the guy that it was getting hard to breathe, but he said he didn't feel that way. Seoin could see that it wasn't inconvenient for the guy, so she should try too. There are only 4 left: Min Yi-hyun, Kim Yoo-young, Seoin-a, and Lee Sa-hyuk. All of them performed well during the hunt, especially Hyun. It's not for nothing that the director ordered to keep an eye on him, but the instructor has no desire to follow his order. The woman said that they were going to the 7th room. Everyone was amazed who those guys were, because before that she said that only graduates can reach the 7th room. Then they went to the 8th room, and the boy and Kim felt uneasy, and Seoin and Hyun were fine. Starting from the 8th room, the concentration of mana in space fluctuates every second, just like in a real dungeon. Even as a genius, it's going to be hard. A woman, a boy, and a girl went to the 9th room. Seo Ying became ill after entering the 9th room, and the instructor was afraid. The guy hurried to help the girl, and the woman remembered the conversation with the director, who told her that no matter what the situation, you cannot be the first to lend a helping hand to the guys. A danger for them. This is a chance. Wouldn't it be a pity if she took this chance away right in front of the guys? It was just beautifully worded nonsense. The guy asked if the girl was okay. She said yes, but immediately her vision blurred. She told herself that she couldn't lose, that only the strongest survived in the world. No matter how talented someone was in magic, one day they would have to bow down to a martial arts class. Weaklings have no future. If they don't admit it here, they won't understand it anywhere else. But this time the girl lost. She was taken away on a stretcher by doctors. The guy didn't understand what kind of loss she was talking about and ran to the portal. The teacher ran after him. The 10th room is already closed, and it becomes difficult for her to breathe. Asking if the student is alright, he told E that he was getting sick and it was time to wrap up. The instructor agreed and called for him to follow her so that they could leave together. She was surprised that the student told her that he was getting sick. She didn't even see a hint of it. Returning to the students, everyone applauded as he was able to overcome the 10th room. We will put him with the level of a raider in the rank. Maybe the guy is capable of more. The teacher said that she hoped that everyone would work hard to keep up with their friend. In a look tired, the guy asked if she was okay, and Ina apologized for making her worry. Kim explained that these are the usual symptoms of mana intoxication. The girl was very exhausted on the first day. Hyun was glad it wasn't anything serious. The girl asked him how he looked. He looked fine, but you never know. After saying that everything was fine, he told me to remove the towel from my neck. The girl was furious, and she was still worried about him. He abruptly changed the subject to how she was feeling. The girl was surprised and said with a proud face that everything was fine. Hyun looked at Seoin. It looked like she was eager to win, but that wasn't the case. It was more like pressure. It's good that she got off lightly this time, but with such a temper, it will be difficult for her to control herself in the future. This does not mean that the guy is going to keep the girl in a tight rein. Well, since he was interfering with current events, there's a good chance that along with On Hyun, Isun, and Yoo Seung-yoon's future, Sung In-ae's future will also change, and so will Kim Yoo-young. Kim asked him why he was watching and if she was pretty, and he told her if she was okay, but judging by the ramblings she was making, not really. Who knows how much the guy's actions will change the subsequent events. In a situation where everything changes very quickly, you need to be prepared to take a step forward. He would have to wait until the deadline, and at that moment the girl threw a towel around his neck and pulled him down, asking him what he was mumbling so that everyone could hear. How big-eared she is, the guy thought to himself. You can't say anything in front of her. Grabbing a towel, he draped it over her head and ruffled her hair. The girl became angry, her eyes turned murderous. The guy put away the towel and raised his hands in fear. If he even knew how much time she'd spent doing her hair, was he tired of living? He said it was his fault, but he couldn't tell the difference. The girl's eyes turned red. He was hinting that she was scary. The guy realized that he was caught and began to run away as quickly as possible. The girl rushed after him. The girl laughed because she had just come from the infirmary and Hyung would need him much more for the hike. She looked after them with sweet eyes and told them how close they were to each other. They ran past the orange-haired guy who dropped out of room 7 with Kim. He was indignant and tried to understand how the guy managed to reach the 10th room, but then he was distracted by some other student asking what he was thinking. The guy asked me to tell you everything about the student who went to the 10th room. Kim then caught up with Hyung and continued to beat him, even though he apologized. The guy started talking about Min Yi-hyun. He reminded that it's important for students to analyze the strength of others. That's the task in the academy. and that student, the first mage to take the lead among hunters. He knows its history, he is interested in where it came from. He is sure that this is nonsense, the student is hiding something from them. The narrator laughed. Because there were already 2 checks, what he still wants and how the guy could fool everyone, this is Mills. The young man with orange hair doesn't understand why he is stronger than him. The second guy did not understand, then he is inferior not only to him, but also to 2 girls. He raised his hands and asked not to overestimate his abilities. He couldn't get around Min Yi-hyun, who left. The guy thinks the boy with the orange hair is an 8th grader's syndrome idiot. He ran after him. Our hero is sitting in the office and talking to the teacher via video link. Apparently he wants to know how the hunt went. He believes that the result will not surprise her. The guy took first place. Someone complimented him, suggesting that it was Park Sung-yee's manager who was sitting out of the camera area. They noticed that the guy is not at all delighted with his victory, and also noticed what a chic apartment he has. Apparently he scored a lot of points. They congratulate him. Even in such an academy, with all the difficulties of training, he showed the best start. They are proud of him. He was afraid to take second place. The teacher asked if he was interested in someone on the hunt. He asked if they wanted to take him on an internship, and the teacher replied that she would think that if he shared information, there would be a reward. Whether the teacher is being too generous, she understands that next time he will not agree to a reward that will be 10 times more. He started Song-in from the magic class, Kim Young from the magic class 2, On Hyung from the martial arts class. In his opinion, they can be taken to the Lotus, and there is also another one, only he is not a first-year student, but the teacher said that she does not mind, she will gladly take him. He said goodbye, saying the name, Lee Yusun. If the woman is not mistaken, this is the youngest son of a rank C raider. Due to his lack of talent, the young man is not given much attention in the family. But blood is blood. If you take him to them, there may be a conflict with the Wind God Guild, which is run by his father. The guy is sure that the risk is worth it, because the boy will become a world-class alchemist. They ended their conversation. Mrs. Baek Ji-hyun came to the woman. She asked the servant to let her in. The woman smiled and said that the lady was not a second late. The latter replied that the merchant's time was worth its weight in gold. She greeted the chairwoman and extended her right hand. The woman always thought that there were no friendly relations between them, so she invited her to sit down, and she thanked her. The lady went straight to the point. It's really hard for them to become friends, even though she doesn't need to, so you can avoid idle chatter. She said she was wondering how a very interesting specimen got into the Lotus Guild and how much it was worth. The woman gave a proud grin in response. Their people are not commodities, they are not for sale, why shouldn't the lady go elsewhere? She asked if that guy thought so. The woman laughed and said that not everything in this world can be bought with money, and apparently she absolutely does not understand it. She didn't expect any other response from the woman. Frankly, her goal was only small talk as a gesture of goodwill. Such a gesture caused only the discomfort of the chairwoman. In that case, the lady felt that she had better leave because she have enough to do. And it's obvious that they're not looking for something to talk about. The woman said she was surprisingly perceptive. Putting on her glasses, she agreed, adding that there was no way for a merchant without it. The next day, an endurance assessment was posted. Hyung waited for the data to be calculated. On Hoyoung surpassed him by 2 points. It seems that he still doesn't reach the level of a martial arts genius. With disappointment, he thought, second place is also a result, there's no need to rush now. However, it can't reach its goal yet. After looking at the winner, he left. He walked over to the girls, Seo, and looked at him with support. Kim was disappointed. She started cursing at him like a magician could breathe down on Hoon's neck, in the most direct sense, especially in terms of stamina. The hero replied that it was nothing strange. He had previously been in a martial arts class and should not rely on magic alone. There is such an expression, endurance is the strength of the state. And he tapped the girl's head. She was furious with such an action. One day she would definitely tear off his cock's beak. The headmaster was right, the guy was really dangerous. One of the instructors thought a mage would never be able to show such physical endurance, so what was his secret? Seoin looked at the boy. The second lesson was starting. They move on to the next stamina test, this time in a different room. This is the test that students use to identify the limits of their abilities. In front of the students was the same room built using the Academy's advanced technology, where they would be tested for evasiveness. This is a measurement system that modulates the battle with virtual enemies. Hyung listened to everything without enthusiasm. In any other case, they would be required to destroy monsters and analyze the situation. Today they are looking at stamina, so only the evasion skill will be evaluated, and eliminating a monster will only bring additional points. The guy agreed with him. No matter how you look at it, the raider profession is associated with hunting monsters and finding equipment, potions, and artifacts. A raider can't be called a professional if he doesn't attack enemies. They were given transmitters. Kim asked what they were for, and Hyung said that they helped the system project monsters into reality. The instructor was surprised that the guy knew this. They also stimulate the brain, convincing them that monsters really exist. On our combat system, the projector overlays a three-dimensional image on the background, making the monsters seem real, and the purpose of this device is safety. Even though monsters materialize in your head, they still remain virtual, so they do not pose any threat. True, everyone receives about 1/5 of the damage from each monster attack due to the stimulation of the sensor, but this is done not for intimidation, but for concentration, preparing for trips to the dungeon. The instructor said that they can set themselves any level of assessment, from the 1st to the 100th, but today the assessment will be carried out within 10. Each team has 4 people, now he will call the team numbers, and their participants, they will proceed on a first-come, first-served basis. The third team was Hyung, with 2 girls from the martial arts class and a magician guy. The hero commented in a balanced manner. The teammate asked if Min Yi-hun was his ally, and he said yes. He said that he knows that he won the first place in the hunt, but it's strange for him how the magician was able to get into the lead. He believes that everything has its own reasons and whether the guy wants to reveal his secret of victory. Hyung didn't understand what he was talking about. He said that there was nothing so hidden. The orange-haired guy then replied that he would have to find out for himself by using the force. He started charging the magic in his hand. The hero said that he dragged out the conversation for so long to say that he wanted to fight him. The boy's eyes were red, and he said bitterly that he was glad that Hyung was getting it quickly. The girls from the team didn't understand what was going on. They should be friendly. One of them is very worried and hoped that it will end well. She went to the guys, stood between them to stop the conflict, but immediately the instructor called the third team to go up to the field. The conflict did not happen. The team went to fight. The girls were with shields and swords, the boys with staffs. The first stage of the test started in 5 seconds. Everyone was prepared. A skeleton knight appeared in front of him. The guy said to move back, but something flashed before the eyes of all the guys. Our hero ran straight at the enemy. Everyone was shocked by what he did. Hyung didn't expect anyone to challenge him, so there are no other options. He'll have to show off his abilities. He started charging an attack in his hand and launched it at the monster as he ran. Everyone watching and the instructor were in shock. The system was staggering. The guy kept hitting him and showing his strength. The mono weapon skill has been activated. It's a special one that ordinary mages aren't able to use. It is useless to them and can also cause them physical damage. But in his case, the situation is different. Everyone was watching his show. The guy commented that he was a sick bastard, and the girls were scared and shocked. The first stage on evasiveness was successfully completed. All enemies were defeated, and additional points were awarded. Min Yi-hun's student ID is 100%. The second stage begins. The guy said that he had not seen this opponent for a long time. So they reached the 10th level and it was completed. They set a new record, or rather Hyung. The guy from his team was amazed. How is this possible? The hero looked at the hand and said that it turned out well. After he changed the method of fighting according to teacher Yoo Seung-yoon's instructions, his body immediately became so light, and he is happy with the result, but she gets strangely excited every time she teaches him. A little uneasy about it, but still, her skill is undeniable. The second magician from the team was indignant at what he did. Not only did he rush to the front rows, but he also crushed everyone alone and wants him to believe that this is impossible. The hero said that he had nothing to answer and left. He asked not to be forced to repeat it, coming close to the guy's face, said, since Tom is so interested, maybe they will find out right now. The young man was frightened and tossed about. The instructor was calling them out, and if it wasn't for him, they would definitely have fought, he said. The guy told him not to think that he won. But I didn't lose either, Hyung pointed out. The boy shouted after him if he would fight him at the Academy Festival. The main character replied that he couldn't, which made the guy angry, and he added that it didn't fit into his plans. On Hoyoung was thinking about his opponent in his room. It seems that he doesn't think of him as a competitor at all. When he said that he would return his badge after winning the Academy Festival, he wasn't lying. He got up from the bed and said it wasn't time to chill out, he should go to the gym. He couldn't disappoint Yi-hun. There was a conversation going on in the office. The adults were discussing the endurance test and this year's rookies. They didn't miss out. Even Yi-hun was able to set a new record, but how it was unclear. The instructor understood that it was not just a matter of talent. His experience that he showed in battle was unrealistic. He went into the director's office, who was sitting with his back to him, and praised him for his good work. Now they should look at the test results. The instructor announced those who got the highest score. They were On Hoyoung, Cha Yoo-won, Min Yi-hun. The director turned to face Kim Seok and complimented him on his excellent work, then immediately looked at the screen where there were various photos of Hyung. He smiled maliciously and asked him to continue to report to him about this guy's activities, and if they notice anything strange, they will know what to do. The instructor bowed and said yes. The director, without even looking at him, said that it was like being behind a stone wall and asked him to finish there. Now they can start preparing for the next event. The employees have obeyed. The man continued to stare at the screen with a grin. The 27th stage of the evasiveness test was completed, and our hero exhaled. Isn't the 27th level his maximum? That's something a half dozen C rank raiders can do. In other words, it's his current level. The next thing on the plan is to practice in Dungeon X. He needs to get ready. One of the most shameful episodes in the history of Mills Academy and a tragic event that took many lives in its wake. Hyung and his teammates were in the middle of that mess. Of the entire team, only he was left alive. He had to listen to insults, curses, and threats. Despite this, the guy did not drop out of school because he did not want to disappoint those who believed in him. Going to the store, the hero wondered if everything would be different this time, before he was called pathetic and useless and not able to protect anyone. He was material, not a person, but he has no desire to repeat his mistakes. There are enough regrets. The day of practice in Dungeon X arrived. Class ended, and the girls called Ihyun to come with them. He looked at them with a smirk. Kim asked what would happen tomorrow. She has never been in a dungeon before. Seo-in is also worried about it, that she won't be able to sleep properly from tomorrow on. Hyung said that the first time is always like this. The girl was surprised by his answer. Has he been there before? The guy is not sure about the dungeon, but he has met monsters, and by the way, now there is one right in front of him. The girl got mad and went to beat him. Seo-in watched their fight with a smile. If they are very nervous, then the guy handed the potion. He took them in himself when he bought it, and they can use it at their discretion. Kim forgave the hero this time, and Seo-in thanked him. If luck had been a factor in survival before, he thought now it would all depend on skill alone. On the day of practice in the dungeon, Hyung was meditating. Before it can enter the energy core, it needs to warm up. Even if you are a strong mage, suddenly using higher spells can result in a mana recoil. If at this moment, when the magic is applied, the mana flows in the opposite direction, the user's body will begin to collapse. Mages who often have to wield higher spells are not resistant to mana recoil. The skills of super fast target and sacrifice just belongs to the high class. If the hero does not develop mana, he will face this problem himself, especially since he does not know how dangerous a situation can happen in the dungeon, whether he or his comrades will die. And most importantly, if you concentrate your mana in the core beforehand, he tried, you can instantly apply it to strengthen physical abilities or spells, which is quite a useful feature. The system shows that when loading, the user moves to the point in the past that they want to return to. What point does the guy want to return to? He sits quietly and then begins teleporting. Eyes scared, the screen shows that he has moved to the main quest, the first intersection. He will have to resolve several fatal intersections of fate and choose what to do. Follow a new path or not interfere in the course of events. His choice can both save and destroy other people. The decision depends on him. The difficulty of the quest was unknown, the reward was unknown, and there was only 12 minutes left. The guy thought that this was some strange thing again. The Nornir system definitely wants him to develop. They need him for some purpose. However, they tell you to choose a route, so what's the catch? Mills Academy Dungeon X. Before entering the dungeon, the instructor says that the students will be divided into teams by drawing lots. Everyone looked at each other in fright. The expected reaction, the guy said, is that the teams will be unbalanced. Real monsters are waiting for them in the dungeon. If they are lucky, they will easily cope with the task, and if not, they will have to rotate among low-ranked students. The instructor raised her hand and said that this practice is part of an official test that affects grades. In Dungeon X. They will only encounter monsters of the lowest rank, which they can easily cope with on their own, so I asked them not to worry. Hyun knew that these words were a lie from Koo Jane. In Dungeon X, indeed, most of the monsters belong to the lower ranks. Just like the instructor said, but based on his past experience. You can also run into a D-rank boss, Lord Kobold boss. It's not a problem for him to deal with it, but he's not going to play by the headmaster's rules. However, in the dungeon, he will make a mistake that can be used against him. The test has begun, the instructor announced. She asked the named disciple to come forward and draw lots. The hero found himself in a team with his girlfriend Ine. It's good when there are familiar faces. Hyung thought that she had great skills and they understood each other well, so it would be easier to make strategies. Then Kim Jina from the battle class and Park Sung from the same class appeared in front of the guys. They're on the third team, the guy asked with a laugh, so let's do our best. They're heading into battle. The guy hears voices, beads of sweat run down his face. Why is he being told to choose a route or that the decision depends on him? He can save or destroy other people. Now he realized that this choice, it turns out the system was originally aimed at this. Everything was repeated. He greeted the other team members, introduced his girlfriend, who was shy. The guys were sociable and ready for new acquaintances. The hero realized that these two are exactly the same as in the past. Since they have already met, it is worth discussing the strategy. Hyung was appointed as the leader, and he explained the strategy and reminded them that no matter what creature was in front of them, they should not hesitate, especially for the warriors in the vanguard. Everyone listened to him with their mouths open. This is what it means to be in the first place among beginners. All actions are thought out to the smallest detail. The teacher clapped her hands and said that the time for strategy discussions was up. They were moving on to practice and asked them to go through all the commands ahead. On-Hone was the leader of the fourth group, and the guy was glad that his second friend was on the team with him. She definitely wouldn't get hurt. After announcing that all team members can go down to their assigned dungeon, she wished them luck. Hyung was ready to go. The fourth team went through the dungeon. Kim asked if kobolds would show up. After all, the place looks like a mine. The guy replied that most likely he heard that there is at least a lot of ore and diamonds probably too. The girl was laughing. Maybe she should really look for it. Suddenly, her gaze was startled. The guy shouted that something was coming and everyone got up in their places. The young man warned that they were weak alone, but if they attacked in a pack, they would have to try harder, and added that he wanted to finish this business quickly. The girls activated skills, Kim Light Bomb, and the second girl, Air Blast skill. They defeated the enemies with magic and breathed a sigh of relief. No one was injured except for the second guy in the team. They didn't know that kobolds can use poison. On Hone asked him to calm down. Then someone huge appeared, and Kim was terrified. It turned out that it wasn't the poison at all, such a powerful mana. Why did this happen? The guy asked. Where did the kobold lord come from? At this time, the third team was walking into the cave. The red-haired girl praised the main character, but he denied it, saying that everything came out by itself. How is it? Of course, the girl asked. At this rate, a clean approach is provided for them. Sion fell behind the team. The guy noticed her arms were crossed over her stomach. He asked her if she was comfortable with the other guys, and she reluctantly agreed, thinking that she was still a very shy girl. Although this is not surprising, before his return to the past, there were rumors that she could only say 3 or 4 words in a day, no more. The guys got into a certain room. There was an eagle painted on the ceiling. This place was different from how the guy remembered it. It was immediately obvious that the director had done his best, in which case he could claim to be a very interesting figure for him. The Red Wolf tried to reach out to Hyung, who realized that this was the monster. He told the team that the monster is close. They stick to plan C. After rejecting the attack, they go on a counterattack. This creature is much stronger than those that they met before. He asked them to be more careful. Stronger, the teammate was surprised. He had heard that only weak monsters appeared here. Immediately, something cracked. A kobold lord appeared. Where did the boss come from? Everyone was afraid. This is especially true for the Vanguard. They activated magic armor and the provocation skill was activated. The guy restrained the attack of monsters and asked a friend to help. Hyung then tried to use the same core strength that he had trained in the morning and succeeded. It was an incredible power. From such a monster will definitely die. I knew that there would be surprises, but I certainly did not expect to meet the main boss with regeneration. Harsh. The system reported that it recognized a creature behind Lord Koboldo. The creature identified as Odin's Raven. Received the Raven Hunter special quest. Red Eye stared out of the darkness, glittering. They were tasked with eliminating all of Odin's ravens that put pressure on them and Asa's opponents. The goal is to destroy 5 people. Level C, the quest reward is an empty map, and the reward for a complete sweep is a class hobby. The remaining time is unlimited, and the penalty for failure is death. At the same time, as soon as everyone entered their dungeons, the teacher continued to look at the lists, and also could not understand because in front of her was a person who somehow managed to reach unprecedented heights. She knew that even she, a high-ranked player, would not be able to do such a thing, and he would surely take first place again with his new team. By this time, the gate opened. The teacher thought that it was just the same third team, but at the same moment her eyes were struck by the fact that a completely different squad came out to her. Led by a genius boy, he was carrying another of his comrades who had just passed out. He just took and lost consciousness. Kim Yoo-young was shouting about how they were in huge trouble because a kobold lord had appeared in the dungeon. The teacher couldn't believe it. It couldn't have just happened. What was going on in the dungeon anyway? The healers who restored the same guy understood that he was just poisoned with light mana. He just needed to be revived. Kim came up to the teacher at the same time and asked him if the third team hadn't returned yet. To their surprise, the teacher said that this was not the case. The genius said that this is simply impossible, because with the skills of our main character, as well as with the help of Sion, Tai should have finished a long time ago. The teacher was very wary, because she thought that only one person was involved, and it was at this moment that she decided to call the principal. He picked up his phone, of course, but pretended not to understand. Kim is very excited, but rather quietly started to say that a monster of a fairly high rank was discovered in the dungeon. They needed emergency help. The director interrupted her and said that he understood her. He also hinted that there was no need to worry about this because he would definitely send his people out. Well, as soon as the call ended, the only thing Kim thought about was that she was being followed by an incredibly disturbing feeling, but she didn't even know where it came from. But we all understand that this is precisely because of their director, who definitely set up everything. Of course, at this moment, our protagonists were fighting in the same lair. It was very difficult for them. The Vanguard simply could not cope. They couldn't even hurt a kobold, or rather just a boss, and it was at this point that our protagonist discovered a creature called Odin's Raven. We understand that Odin had 2 of them, Hyujin, who thought, and Munin, who memorized. It was with their help that he collected knowledge about the world and ruled Asgard, which meant that this was the work of Odin's followers. Our main protagonist only smiled at this, because there was a sense of B-rank monsters everywhere, and on top of that, there was also a regenerating kobold lord that they simply couldn't defeat. They couldn't even injure him. Hyan knew that he was strong enough, but he couldn't handle him that easily, so should he retreat? He realized that this is not possible, because he used to just do what he retreated. He justified his life with cowardice and the desire to live. It was at this moment that he activated his shield. He understood that now his whole life is one continuous regret, but he was given a chance. I don't care if it's a test or not. No, but this time, he would definitely be able to protect his comrades. He got up from his knees and started telling everyone to listen carefully, because he would stop the boss who was standing in front of them and let them take it and make their way to the exit. No one could believe it. They said that he was alone. But the only thing that the main characters did was start activating their abilities, which protected that very blonde guy, because behind him were kobolds that crept up on the sly. Hyan once again asked them all to shut up and just scram, because he just wouldn't be able to protect them. While he was saying this, the boss wanted to hit him from behind. Our protagonist wanted to react to this, but for some reason there was already a shield behind him. It was the case within, who decided to help him. It was at this point that our main character realized that at the moment he sees only one thing in her eyes full of determination. Is it really him who influenced her so much? He realized that there was no point in sending her away, so he told the rest of his team to run to the exit and report to the instructor as soon as possible. His team wanted to say that it was very dangerous, but right at that moment, the main character looked so convincing that they had no choice but to believe in him and also say that they could handle it. They only asked for one favor, a favor to keep them going until the end. It is at this moment that our hero, as well as with everyone else, the main protagonist made such a look that Sioen understood what he wanted. She only said that she would protect the rear. It was at this moment that she used her ability, the sacred sword, with which small fry were exterminated, and Hyung took on the boss because he was the problem. While the main character was flying around him, trying to dodge his attacks, he noticed that his opponent's body was gradually melting. He realized that the amount of mana that the Kobold King's body took in from the outside had its limit. Behind that monster was a creature that controlled and nourished the kobold with energy that destroyed its body. By this point, our protagonist realized that if Odin's raven was behind that boss, it only meant that Odin had to hide behind. At this point, the same bracelet called mistletoe was used. This attribute expanded the user's field of view so that the skill that our character received was called Mana Detector. This ability allowed you to recognize the movement of energy of all magical creatures. He looked into the monster that stood before him and noticed that some strange threads were going to the bony hands of another monster, Odin the Raven. Hyung really liked it, so he knew he was going to tear his opponent to pieces. At the same time, Odin was sitting in heaven, unable to understand what was going on at all. In front of him was Hyujin, who told him that they were able to determine the location of the mistletoe that was missing from God's treasury. It was located in Midgard, which meant that something had fallen into the hands of the enemy of evil. At the same time, all the gods started talking about how it was most likely the work of Mimir, the old bastard. But another god said that they didn't have to worry, because there was a contract made with the assholes from Asura's enemies. Valkyrie, who was sitting with this god, told him that he was too frivolous, because most likely he forgot about the last war where they lost Balder, who was killed by a branch of mistletoe. Odin, who listened to all this, said only one thing, so that his servant Hyujin would take it and find out if the enemy of evil had contact with Asura's opponents. It is at this point that we realize that Hyujin is the father of our hero, who most likely serves Odin. In front of us is the director's office, where the instructor entered. The headmaster asked him what the current situation in the dungeon was like. The instructor of course said that no one seemed to notice anything. The headmaster just couldn't help but smile at you. He said that it was just perfect, but he also said something that was a little unclear, because he managed to borrow his strength. He knew that no matter what our main protagonist did, he would end up in his power anyway, because it was all in the name of Odin as well as the aces. The director's eyes lit up with a strange yellow light that couldn't help but be frightening. Of course, while he was enjoying his victory, at the same time our main character continued to fight with the boss, who continued to regenerate. He was constantly trying to get back from it, constantly trying to hit it again when he had an extra second. At one point, he jumped right up to Sioen and asked her to block the boss's attack so that the shadows would reach him. Sioen had a very tired look on her face, so Hyun noticed that she fully understood the situation she was in. There was a very high mana recoil probability right now. After all, even if our main character killed the boss, Sioen is more likely to die, but despite all this, she still wants to help him. Why at all? After all, when he was given a second chance, he promised himself that he would not trust anyone else, because the world is cruel and unfair. But it was at that moment that he needed this support, because he only had one opportunity. It was at that moment that he activated his chains again, which rushed at the boss. He rushed straight at him because he knew that more than one attack from the boss would not reach him, because Seoin continued to activate her power shields on our protagonist, but time after time it became more difficult. Hyun, while approaching the boss, recalled the words of one person that there is no worse death than death without faith in comrades. It was only through these words that he realized that he had to prove that the man was right. At the same time, he jumped up, using the same high-speed chains, which surprised Seo Ying incredibly, because how finally does it take to control mana to do something like this? Of course, all the actions of our protagonist incredibly angered the boss, who already began to look straight up and swing his club. Seoin thought that our main character wouldn't dodge, but at the same time, with the help of a high-speed chain, he was able to dodge. He remembered all the moves he had learned while he was training with his mentor, that first he had to swing from left to right, then move up, and then the passive skill, Hone Swordsmanship, was activated altogether. Then it was followed by the skill Agile Step, Flexible Body Movements. It was after activating these skills that our main character was sure that the kobold simply would not be able to start regenerating itself with a new one. So as soon as he made that hit, there was another message that the magical connection between Odin's Raven and the Kobold Lord was severed. Seoin was shocked, and Hyung just came down to the ground and said it was time to look at the face that was controlling everything. He immediately caught the very crow that wanted to fly away. He caught it and asked, after all, what was Odin's purpose? How was Ku Jane related to him? But as he continued to step on the raven's head, he realized that the raven simply didn't have any intelligence. It was useless to pry something out, so at the same time, he just took it and stamped on it. Seoin started to resent him, but Hyun realized that this wasn't the end of it, because the mana recoil was probably about to happen. It was at this moment that both of them started to suffocate as the dirty mana in their bodies started to appear. Right at this moment, just when everyone thought that all was lost, the mana filtering started happening. Our main protagonist knew that everything worked out, because the amount of mana in standby mode was increased by as much as 5%. There was even a very nice bonus. He was told that the first target of the task was destroyed. For this he received 5 points of characteristics, 1 empty card, as well as a level increase by 1 unit. His health was also fully restored, but it was only him because at the same time, he received a message that one of the team members was in critical condition, and untimely assistance could definitely lead to the death of Seoin, who was just lying on the ground and writhing in pain. After a while, Seoin opened her eyes, her head was hurting, and she didn't know what had happened, but she noticed Hyung in front of her, who was apparently napping. His first question was, how did you feel? Because most likely you definitely got hurt during the battle. Seoin went to check her stats at the same time, where she noticed that her mana and stamina had completely recovered. She couldn't believe it, because she had recently experienced a mana recoil. So she confessed that she seemed to be doing fine, and also asked how our main protagonist was feeling. He, in turn, replied that everything was fine, and also asked for forgiveness because he dozed off from fatigue. He stood up, stretched, and reported that the monster you were fighting was dead. Seoin couldn't calm down, because why was he still with her? But the main character only said that he was waiting for her because he had a conversation with her. He turned in her direction, looked at her with his serious eyes, and also wanted to share something with her. Seoin didn't take his words in any way at first, and then he even thought that he was going to kiss her. She blushed very much, but at this moment the atmosphere was completely different in the hall where all the students were going out. Kim Yoo-young was really raging, asking those students who were in the group with our protagonist why were they the only ones who came out. The instructor, whose name was Kim, was telling Yoo-young to just stop because everyone should have understood that she was very worried about her comrades. The genius boy was standing on the side and thought that it couldn't be that Hyung and Seoin just got killed, but just as he thought that, another door opened. The boy at the same time ran to Kim, asking her to calm down because in front of them appeared just the culprits of the celebration, who took and returned. Our main character looked at them all and asked, after all, did they really make such a fuss for you just because of them? The instructor couldn't believe it, because it was simply impossible, because the research team reported their deaths, and judging by the mana reaction in the dungeon, there was a boss of at least B rank. Yoo-jung couldn't hold back her tears. She immediately ran to the two of them and started hugging them, saying through her tears that the instructors with the researchers said that they were dead. Our hero, who did not particularly like all these veal endearments, said that she should leave him alone, let him go for a while. Hyun also noticed that the same members of his team that he had asked to run away first were standing to the side. He turned to them and expressed his gratitude that they trusted him. His teammates also wanted to apologize, but they didn't have time because our main protagonist said that it was he who ordered them to run so that they could call for help. He said that they were not to blame for what happened because they did everything right. Kim Yoo-young continued to yell at them, saying that you can't just leave your comrades, but the main character only replied that he would have done just that, so you need to stop grumbling and accept it all, because not everyone is as brave as her. He looked at her and asked her not to be angry about him, so Yoo-young said that she wasn't angry about him, but about Seoin, who she hugged at the same time. Our character felt very pleased, because once again he teased his girlfriend and also noticed the instructor. The same conversation with So-in about how he told her that he was the one who cured her came back to him. He knew that she was very confused, but he just couldn't tell her everything he knew because it was better for people not to know about his abilities. So-in thought about two things: how she thought the wrong thing because she thought he was going to kiss her, and how she couldn't think of a reason to hide her abilities at all. Hyun even asked her if she wanted to know why exactly the Kobold Lord appeared in the dungeon. After all, it was the headmaster, who is a real scum who uses his students like puppets. In fact, he is not such a saint as the media believes, because Koo-jane can easily get rid of someone who ceases to be of use to him. So-in asked our protagonist, is that really why they are so hostile towards him and also hide C? Hyun replied that it was, so So-in decided to ask him, because when they left the principal's office, he told them not to trust anyone within the walls of Mills. Does this mean that the main character knows a lot about the director, because the director knew who he was from the very beginning, and also acted as if he was aware of what was going to happen in the dungeon today? Where did he know so much from in the first place? She asked her to answer her. Hyun certainly couldn't have expected such a reaction. But was it dangerous to drag So-in into all this mess? Was it not worth it? Or was it even worth using brainwashing on her? But as soon as he thought about it, he realized that she had very high mana stats as well as a strong spirit. His skill definitely can't work, especially since it was definitely a drastic method. He definitely doesn't want to build camaraderie like this. He realized that it was better to tell her what he couldn't say anymore, because her life would be in danger. It was their agreement. As soon as Kim Yoo-young got rid of him, he was approached by an instructor who asked him to accept his deepest apology for not being able to summon them from the dungeon, saying that she was very sorry, but was glad that they were still alive. Hyun, in turn, said that it was okay because it wasn't the instructor who had trapped them, and it was at this moment that he said that he would go to his room because he wanted to rest. So-in wanted to catch up with him and also ask him if he didn't want to tell her a little more because something like that might happen again. But Hyun just smiled and said that he should forgive him, but he believed that she was definitely keeping their promise, which was to make sure that he didn't know what to do. No one was supposed to know what our hero can do, and also knows a lot more than everyone thinks. But it was at this moment that our protagonist was notified that the main quest's first intersection was completed, and a reward was determined for the route that was marked with the letter B, which was different from the past. The item that Hyun ended up getting was called the Iden Golden Apple. Of course, it couldn't have gone so smoothly, because the headmaster was clearly pleased that instructor Kim Seok-hee had disappointed him. The instructor, of course, was incredibly scared, and he asked for forgiveness because he understood what the director could do to him in case of another failure. Yes, and the director, in turn, hinted that he did not need people who could not carry out his assignments. His face changed so much that the instructor once again began to bow at Tom's feet, saying that he would not let him down again. He promised it. The headmaster ordered him to make Hyun listen to them like a dog at the next event, because if he didn't, the headmaster's patience would definitely break. By this time, our hero was already in his room. He took a bath, but noticed in front of him the very clothes in which So-in was. He remembered that Kim Yoo-young had died in the past, and An Ho-young had never been able to reach his full potential, so to change the future, he had to step in. But that was definitely not the case with So-in, because she would handle everything herself. But still, he realized that they should be careful because it wasn't clear how this would affect the future at all, so he decided that he should close this matter for now. He decided to distract himself. First of all, he needed to find out how the director was connected with Asami in general. After all, the incident in the dungeon is just the beginning. Real adventures are waiting ahead. So to be ready for everything, you need to speed up the learning process. He started watching TV, where it was said that you need to come up with themed dungeons that will use an unusual technique. And the main feature will be that in the middle of the raid you will not be able to get out. All this gave our friend that he almost forgot about one thing. He almost forgot about the hidden objects that everyone was talking about, or as they are called, God's gifts. It is these gifts that are the reason why everyone is eager to get into the themed dungeon, despite the intricate conditions of clearing. He realized that thanks to them, he could get what he wanted. By this point, we can see Kim Yoo-young's conversation in front of us, as well as So-in's, where we can see that Kim Yoo-young is not in a very good state. She was talking about how Hyung is a bit of a jerk, because she was sure that he was acting like a pig with her, because with Kim, he behaves just like the last scumbag. So-in averted her gaze, so it gave Kim the impression that our main protagonist had done something to her, but So-in only said that it wasn't because she thought he trusted her. So-in even thought that it would be great if Hyung relied on her a little more than he did now, and it was probably just that she wasn't strong enough. Kim Yoo-young got up from the table and held out her hand to So-in, making a happy face, and also told you to forget about everything and go get some delicious things because she had a place in mind. So-in hesitated. She didn't want to take her hand, but Kim Yoo-young still looked too convincing, so she told them to go cheer up. Our hero, in turn, could not get enough of admiring the very object that he received. This item was one of the rejuvenating apples that the goddess Iden had grown. When using it, the owner will be able to get an increase in healing power by 50%, an increase in stamina by 20%, as well as a reduction in the aging rate by as much as 50%. This item cannot be sold at all or given to someone. Holding it in his hands, he understood that all these properties were incredibly rare, they could earn billions, but the fact that it could not be transferred to someone did not allow him to do this. After all, if his memory serves him right, then very soon in one of the amusement parks in Seoul, a rather high-ranking themed dungeon opens, Thundering Steps of Thialfi, in which you can find the Skorikity boots of Thor's servant named Tijalfi. Due to the colossal effect on agility level, all the martial arts class raiders wanted them. It is thanks to them that our main character will be able to achieve a balance between dexterity points, mana, and durability. He also started eating an apple at the same time. He expected that it would be incredibly delicious, but it tasted incredibly ordinary. But by this time the effect of the apple began to take effect, points at the same time began to increase, the level of magic abilities was changed altogether. He realized that even his body had become easier to move, so he could try his luck, so he called his teacher at the same time. After the call, for some reason, he found himself in an amusement park where many families were going. He went to the ticket office where the girl was sitting. She asked him what kind of ticket was there. Well, as soon as she asked him about it, our protagonist took out the card of the Lotus Guild. He told her that a themed dungeon will appear there very soon. By this point, the instructor Kim was trying to find our character, but the girl who was standing at the entrance and said that he came to her last night and asked to give him time off, but did he have any problems? The instructor said that there were no problems. But she was thinking that she couldn't believe that a newly enrolled student could recover so quickly from that incident in the dungeons. Because don't say anything, but he copes with psychological injuries quickly. Is Hyung really that strong in spirit? Kim at the same time asked another girl to tell him to find her, to which the gray-haired ones replied that of course they would carry out her errand. As soon as the instructor went outside, he put on his earpiece at the same time. She tried to contact the head of Song Jae-sok, which she managed to do. She said that she managed to find out that the director had a hand in everything. Sung Jae-sok said that if Kim Seoki's dungeon manager was questioned, it didn't mean that his life was hanging in the balance, so he asked to keep an eye on the other two and also contact him if he found out anything. But Kim didn't want to hang up. She said that she found out something else. She said that Hyung, who she reported earlier, might also know something. By the time everyone was in the park, there was an announcement that everyone should leave the park immediately. Our main character noticed that everyone acts incredibly quickly, because most likely, the Lotus Guild is actually a weighty argument because everything started right at that moment. He recalled his conversation with his teacher, saying that even if there is any danger, you need to take care of yourself first. Yoo Seung-yoon trusted his abilities, but where would he find a teacher who wished his student dead, since she knew that no one knew what might have happened in the dungeon? It was at this point that a themed dungeon began to appear, for the successful completion of which a special item will be issued. A quest called Big 3 was opened. Hyung noticed that nothing had changed since he remembered a girl named Seo Ah-hyung. At one point, she claimed to be a genius and she had a skill called accelerated thinking. But it was her bragging in the past that just ruined her, because there was no need to call yourself a genius whose IQ reached 150. It was because of her bragging that Ta died, and Thunder Boots went to another raider. It was at this very moment that our protagonist decided that he would have to take matters into his own hands. He decided to take the initiative. The first mission, a Viking raid, was discovered, and our main character was ready for it. The system told him to change the end of the story. Once syncing with the character was complete, the system told him that he would be playing as the Viking warrior Jalfi who survived the attack. His first mission was Revenge of Thialfi. He opened his eyes and saw a theme song in front of him, where it was said that the thunder god wanted to have the same fast legs as Jalfi, but it didn't work out. He kidnapped Jalfi's younger sister, so all he had to do was get revenge on him. The reward for this task was the skill cry of the Lord, but the condition for failure was the death of the character himself as well as his sister. We understand that the one played by our main character and protagonist is the servant of Thor, as well as the fastest person in 9 worlds. After losing his family to Viking raids, he came to hate the Aces, who were revered by the attacking sea wolves. But was that really the case? Did Thialfi hate the gods of Asura? After all, it wasn't like that in the first place, so why was the split of the Aesir and Nornir to blame again? But by this time, our hero woke up from the fact that someone was calling his name. He realized that at this moment he was on a ship that had been stolen to rescue Riskba, and in front of him was Frederick, who had come up with a plan to capture the ship. He stretched out his hand to it, but at the same moment the ship just took and broke into 2 parts. The ship was captured. The main character didn't understand what was going on, but the search for his sister would definitely have to be postponed for now, so he asked Frederick to give him everything. No one could believe this action. Everyone was shouting at him to hide in a corner, just like a rat, and not climb the enemy ship. But at the same moment he noticed that he was on another ship was the same girl. IQ which exceeded 150, the youngest Tijalfa, Riskba, was discovered. This all put our character in a very awkward position. We understand that the girl's name is So Ah-hyun. She was the owner of a genius mind and also the greatest raiders of the future. That's exactly what she told herself. But all she couldn't figure out was why she was there in the first place, because the probability that she was the only person who would be there was incredibly small. But at the same time, she realized that she couldn't break her head, because now she had to figure out how to get out at all. She looked around and realized that the task force should have arrived by now, but it just wasn't there. She wanted to find someone, but the only person she noticed and also started following was our protagonist. And it seemed that he was definitely not one of the operatives, but who then? She decided that she would follow him. The main character just couldn't find the right words for this whole situation. Because everyone was announced to leave, how did they manage to stay at all? While he was thinking, all the pirates pointed arrows at him, but they couldn't hit him because of the bill he had covered himself with. Hyung just couldn't understand why there were only assholes hanging around him all the time, and it was with those words that he defeated all his enemies. But at the same time, he calmed down because he understood that he should have thought more optimistically, because it was clear that Seo Ah-hyun was still an upstart, but she would definitely be able to help him in clearing the dungeon. Well, as soon as he started thinking about it, the other thug wanted to kill him. He knew that if he couldn't just throw that girl away, then he would have to use her better, but first of all, he needed to deal with these idiots who were bothering him. After dealing with the bully, he met others, to whom he directly said that he did not have time for them, because everyone should run into him at once. Of course, we understand that our protagonist is much stronger than they are, so at the same time we noticed that everyone was passed out. He approached the girl, and then asked her to stop pretending to be asleep, because if she is riskva, then she needs to cooperate with him. The girl opened her eyes and said that if she was opened, then most likely it was Thialfi who was standing in front of her. She was incredibly brave. She thought that she would put her interlocutor in an awkward position, but it was at this moment that our protagonist simply hit the post next to her, which scared her. He told her that he could see right through her, so he asked her to put the idea of probing him out of her head. It was at this moment, as soon as that girl closed her mouth, and also swallowed nervously, the notification that the first task was completed was displayed. At the same time the reward was calculated. They were transported back to the real world, where they both sat in silence. The girl scanned it and realized that Hyung was a mage, but the movement was like a martial arts raider. He had a crappy personality, but he was also a year old here, so she thought she'd just gotten caught by some ram. Our protagonist asked her what her abilities were. The girl at the same time said that she can increase the level of possession of the ball of another raider. Of course, she decided to deceive him, because there aren't many awakened students in the middle classes, which is why her lie should have worked. She thought about just taking advantage of Hyung and then running away. But our main character said that she definitely has other skills, because he does not like lies. The girl started to say that it was true that she had a lower rank skill. But at the same time, Hyung called her a real capable one, said that Tazami is for this time, and also speeds up the user's thought process. Usually this skill was used to make quick decisions, but it shows itself most effectively in analyzing the enemy. He asked her if he was wrong. The girl was shocked, or rather frightened, because how did that person even know about this? But Hyung just got up from the table and said that he couldn't take her with him, because apparently he was just looking for an opportunity to use it. He asked her not to think that the people around her were so stupid. The girl began to run after him, telling him not to leave her, otherwise she would simply die. So why should he trust her at all? The girl understood the situation she was in, and she started talking about proving what our character had offered to sign a contract for. At the same time, the contract began to be concluded. His conditions were that Seo Ah-hyun was not allowed to harm our protagonist. Seo Ah-hyun must obey the orders of our main character. Hyun, in turn, guarantees Seo Ah-hyun's safety until the Neverland-themed dungeon is cleared, and Seo Ah-hyun must also keep all conversations with the main protagonist a strict secret. Of course, all the conditions made her head hurt, but our hero thought that submission it is a subspecies of the brainwashing skill, and with the help of a contract, he will retain power over her. This is the best way to keep Seo Ah-hyun on a short leash. Seo Ah-hyun, in turn, agreed to this contract, so at the same time, it was like a chain was forged. She was put in a state of submission. This effect will not be removed even after clearing the dungeon, because it is connected with the contract. Hyun laughed, because he thought that these were all normal conditions. Because he didn't take her soul, she didn't have to sulk like that. And if she didn't like something, then she should cancel the contract. He didn't force her to do anything, in which case she would have to cope alone. But after that, Seo Ah-hyun seemed to take heart and started talking about how she promised to spare no effort. At this point, while our protagonists were in the dungeon, we are transported to the Hell Temple. Heel felt that our character was trying hard, but the eyes of the aces were even angrier because of this. But if she left her seat, they would definitely make a fuss, so what should she do? So the only thing she said was that she asked Hell to stand in front of her eyes, so she would definitely have to buy time until the child was ready. Seo Ahyun, who couldn't figure out where they were going, kept asking our protagonist, but he said that the haunted house was where he wanted to go. All this really scared the girl, so our character asked her if she was afraid. Seo Ahyun started to say that no high school girl would be intimidated by such bull. But Hyung replied that this was the one in front of him, so at the same time, he asked her to get ready because they were coming in. Seo Ahyun said that she hadn't even taken a breath yet, but it was already too late, they were inside. It was said that they arrived at a haunted house. They need to leave this location without breaking 3 rules, and the use of certain skills was limited. Hyung asked, what is Seo Ahyun's role? She, in turn, replied that she was a cameraman, and our protagonist said that he was a horror streamer. At the same time, a strange man answered their voice and said that it had been a long time since they had had any guests. His name was Alfred, the Countess of Flender's butlers. It was at this moment that the second mission, Flender Mansion, was obtained. They need to uncover the secret of the old mansion, as well as capture the whole truth on camera and find a way out. The reward was an active skill called illusion. The conditions were simple, you couldn't exceed the limited time limit, and also leave the mansion's secrets unsolved. The penalty for failure was death. Alfred asked our heroes to go inside, but Seo Ahyun was very scared, and our hero didn't feel at ease. Seo Ahyun and the main character continued to look at the entire mansion. Seo Ahyun liked one picture, thought it was cute, so Alfred replied that it was a portrait of the Countess herself with her pet dog. Our hero suggested that the Countess loved her childhood very much, so Alfred, who made an incredibly scary face, confirmed all this and also asked them to go further away. Hyung knew he needed to focus because in the previous mission, the system explained everything, but not this time, they would have to dig up everything themselves. Hyung noticed that Seo Ahyun was scared, so he asked if everything was okay. Seo Ahyun thought he was joking at her again. While they were arguing, Alfred stopped and said that all these treats that stand in front of them were prepared by the Countess. He will return after the meal is finished. Seo Ahyun said that anyone would understand that nothing on the table could be eaten, and our character also talked about sneaking into another place while the butler was distracted. Seo Ahyun said that she needed to gather all the information here first. It was at this point that accelerated thinking was activated. She gathered absolutely all the information to be around, so she said that she managed to find out something about this mansion. Hyun, in turn, only realized that her skill was very serious, so he asked Seo Ahyun to tell him more. Seo Ahyun, in turn, began to say that their hostess here was just a little girl, because if you look closely, her chair was much smaller than the others, which indicated that the Countess had a small complexion. The shelves in the lobby were also too low, and the dirt on the handles was only visible from below. They wanted to just go to the next room, but at the same moment our hero stopped, he said that they were locked. At this time, the whole world, 2-0 after the appearance of the themed dungeon. Many reporters were near this dungeon. They were talking about the fact that the Raider Lotus Guild was inside, as well as middle school student Seo Ahyun. No one could know if they would make it out alive or not. Many people said that all this can undermine the reputation of rescuers, because if their rating is shown in it at the Civil Council, then they will definitely take care that they are lowered. One of the rescuers asked him to check the profile of the teenagers inside, so at the same time, Park noticed that the guy he had seen earlier who had killed all the monsters was not only from Lotus but also enrolled in Mills Academy. One of the saviors noticed his comrade's face looking incredibly surprised, so he thought there was someone else in the dungeon that they couldn't save. But Park told Lee that that wasn't the case, because there's a chance that the dungeon will be cleared only thanks to our protagonist. We're back in the dungeon again, where Seo Ahyun is just shaking with fear and Hyun can't decide if they really need to go back to their old ways. Seo Ahyun said that they would stay there forever, but our protagonist had an answer to that. He said that they were in a dungeon. The dungeon always has a way out. Seo Ahyun, in turn, tried to pretend that she was calmer, so at the same time, she decided that she needed to look again. Our character was standing in front of the door and knew that the hostess was definitely not happy. He even knew that he could easily open the door, because since Seo Ahyun managed to get out of here, the strength requirement, as he understood, was quite simple. In that case, there must be some kind of turn of events, so at that point Seo Ahyun started calling out to our character, saying that there was something wrong with the camera. At first, Hyun thought she was making a big deal out of a molehill again. But then he noticed that the camera displayed something that couldn't be seen with the normal eye. They saw a dead Alfred on the table. They realized that the butler who had brought them to this room wasn't real, he was a fake. The notification informed them that they had solved the first mystery of the mansion Alfred's secret by as much as 70%, which meant that this was all just the beginning, so the main character said that the camera shows something inaccessible to the human eye. Seo Ahyun realized that it turns out that the cameraman has a role in this quest, and their camera is the key to understanding what is happening. Up until this point, our hero couldn't imagine how Seo Ahyun got through this dungeon in the first place, but at the same time, he realized that she was calming down during the thought process. He said that now the question is what exactly the camera shows. He took it out of Seo Ae-young's hands and started talking about that if Alfred wasn't real, then the screen should have shown either the past or the present. Seo Ae-young confirmed his words, saying that there is a logic in this because the theme of the dungeon is the secrets of the mansion. There is no reason to show them the future, which means that most likely it is the past. The past was captured on the screen, in which the secrets of the house are hidden. She pointed out that the food on the table probably wasn't meant to be eaten. Hae-young noticed that she was standing idle, so at the same time he threw her a camera and told her that he was making a refund. As soon as Seo Ae-young got her hands on the camera, not only did she continue to think, but he also realized that he had recently started to feel a faint flow of mana, which meant that it was all a vision, an illusion, one of the common mana traps. At the same time, he used his skill, Absolute Honor, but the activation failed, and the use of this skill is simply prohibited. He looked back at Seo Ae-young, who was crawling under the table, and she was saying that there was probably a device that would open the doors, because it was clear from the camera that the food on the table represented Alfred's corpse, so there must be something like a key in this room. Something clicked in our character's head, so he realized that he knew what he had to do, and he activated the skill, Monolocator, which at the same time he pointed at the jelly that was standing at the end of the table. Hae-young had thought that the lock spell was usually associated with some items, and he knew the formula, so to remove it, you need to get rid of them. At the same time, he said that there was a key inside the jelly that was at the end of their table. Seo Ae-young, on the other hand, couldn't think because is there really jelly inside? At first, Seo Ae-young was very scared of this, but at that moment, she decided that no matter what, she would get the key. As soon as she did, a notification flashed up that they had successfully broken the illusory blocking spell, so they would be awarded an extra reward after clearing the dungeon. Alfred was thinking that it looked like his guests didn't like the food. He didn't think it was possible to be so careless, it was just rude. He, Alfred the butler, could not disappoint his mistress. By this point, as the protagonists continued to look at everything through the camera, they realized that it looked like a guest room. Seo Ae-young was also sure that after dinner, the guests would be escorted to their bedroom, and the bloodstains led in that direction. They definitely needed to go there. Hae-young didn't waste any time, so at the same time, he suggested that Seo Ae-young go to the room and search it as well, because they needed to clear the dungeon, or else Seo Ae-young really wanted to stay there until he was old. Of course, she didn't want to, so at the same time, the main character told me to shut up and follow him. She had to say something if she noticed something. As soon as our protagonist entered the room, he noticed a girl behind him with her mouth sewn shut. She was pointing her finger directly at our character, behind whom stood Alfred. A monster appeared in front of Hae-young, its eyes glowing red. The boy was startled, beads of cold sweat running down his face. When he woke up, a girl was standing over him, worried about his condition and hoping that he was getting better. He asked her not to scream, and the sound made his ears ring. Although the hero expected this, he couldn't react. They were in a prison cell, handcuffs chained to the wall next to them. Are there places like this in dungeons? When he was passed out, the girl used accelerated thinking and looked around. She is sure that this is an underground prison. Even traces of torture were present. Where does such a place come from in the mansion of a minor countess, she wondered. Hae-young charged up and activated the silence skill as he searched for the key to the cell. With a blow, he smashed the grating blocking them, and the girl was frightened by the explosion. He told them to move quietly and carefully so that Alfred and others wouldn't see them. The girl said that because of this, he smashed the whole cage. He asked them not to just talk, but to think about how they could get out. Something flew up behind the guy and hit him in the stomach. A puppy appeared in her hands with a key in its teeth, and the girl shouted that he immediately let the animal go. Judging by the mana that the guy was feeling, it was an ordinary puppy. It seems that the puppy is also stuck here. The girl thinks that the keys are not found in the dungeons just like that. Suddenly it's a trap dog. The puppy growled at the girl, and she got angry in response. The guys got a new quest, Flender's Diary. The task was to sneak into the Countess's room on the 4th floor and read her diary. The difficulty was level B, everything was given 2 hours, and the reward was the removal of restrictions and skills. Hae-young approved the prize. Most likely the task is related to the secrets of the estate. They got to the 3rd floor, but the mansion is so huge that they have no idea where to go next. The camera was also taken away. They have to look around everything. The hero froze. It confused his partner. In a moment it became alarming. When she turned around, she saw a ghost. She said that it wasn't the right time to start a conversation with him, and pulled the guy. He pulled his hand out of hers and began to question the spirit. He'd asked her what her purpose was, what she needed, and when she didn't answer, he'd asked her to help him find Countess Flutter's private quarters. She pointed to the corridor behind them, thanking him, and he promised to send her to heaven as soon as possible. The spirit was gone. The two men were talking about the incident in the dungeon, and whether the guild would take responsibility for it. The man confirmed his thoughts and said that he would be able to avoid the wrath of the public and the civil council directed at the association's raiders by using the academy's defense as a shield. But in return, they want to get a promise not to disclose information about Min Yiyan, which was requested by Guildmaster Lotus. The man wondered if the Lotus would act for the sake of a new student at Mills. It's hard to believe. The man agreed to the guild's terms, but if the dungeon raid failed, the negotiator asked me not to worry about it. If he couldn't handle something like this, Lotus wouldn't step in and help. Hyan killed all the living armors. As far as the girl knows, they are S-rank monsters. It's almost impossible. The path through them was the shortest, and with such a guy can quite cope. They were in Flendir's room, and it was a terrible mess. The girl decided to start the examination from the table. The hero said that probably the diary will be there and at the same time let him check everything around. Maybe there will be hints. She listened. The guy went to the table and picked up the first book that came across, and it turned out to be a diary. On the 7th of May, 1474, she wrote that her skin was getting paler and paler. A doctor came to her at the manor, examined her several times, but did nothing. She would die without leaving the mansion. On May 10th, she wrote about how her parents had bought her the doll she'd always wanted. She is so excited to wait for a trip to the city. There are 2 days left. On the 12th of May, her parents died. Someone attacked them on the road. The tears never stopped. If not for that doll, maybe her parents were still alive. On the 15th of May, her parents' funeral ended. As she is the only heiress, the mansion became hers, but there is no joy. Now she is alone forever. Later, she caught a strange girl in the garden. The thief said that she snuck into the estate to pick lily flowers. She liked the girl because she looks like one of her dolls and they are the same age. She asked her to stay in the mansion. The girl didn't have a name. She called her Sally. They play every day. The girl is happy that she has a friend. She wanted this to go on forever. On the 8th of September, Alfred left the estate without saying a word, and Sally tells her that he left for the city in a hurry. The girl is very anxious. On the 10th of September, the man returned. The girl noticed that he had changed. It seems that Sally is hiding something from her. What happened? On the 10th of November, screams are constantly heard outside the room. Selena, the kitchen owner, the maid Mizzle were shouting again somewhere on the first floor. This is a dream. No, this is reality. The girl is very scared. So what's going on? Sally and Alfred knock right on her room. They want to kill her. What to do? Where are mom and dad? The girl thinks. Hyan closed the book. They received a reward, and restrictions on the use of skills and special skills were lifted. He realized that the Countess of Flendir had been killed, most likely by a demonic beast that had entered the mansion. It was a doppelganger, she guessed. The guy agreed. It seems that this is the work of a doppelganger. Many copies of Alfred appeared in front of him, and in front of them was a monster with a long neck and a strange head. The secret of Alfred's mansion identity has been revealed. The Flendir Diary side quest has been completed. They managed to uncover all the secrets. Now you need to get out, making your way through all the monsters. The guy stepped into the attack, taking the puppy under his arm. The monster finally showed its true colors. The guy's patience ran out. The evil spirits replied that he was quite quick-witted for a human. Hyang replied that he just had a brain, although it wasn't because of it, but because of the monster's stupidity. The creature replied that the guy was a cursed little man and stepped on the attack. Everything turned red as the guy with the puppy in his arms used his magic. We killed the monster. Monster, B-class doppelganger. It has a fairly high level of danger. As long as it can copy the skills and appearance of others, this creature is no more than C-class. The last words of the evil spirits were that he would take the guy's body, give it back, were his last words. How does it feel to play with children first and then accept a humiliating taunt from a human? The guy asked the dying monster. The monster replied with his last breath that he was also a human. He was Sally's girl, but he was jealous of his friend. The creature turned to dust. The guy who joked that the monster was already barking loudly, maybe he should have stayed with the dog, caught the puppy's angry look. Having come to his senses, he said that he did a good job with the key. He will credit it to him. Before leaving, the girl who was killed waved at him. He smiled, said goodbye and made it. The second mission of the Flendir Mansion was completed, as well as the hidden mission. An additional reward will be issued for it. He returns to the real world. Together with the girl, they were sitting on a bench. Hyang was studying something in the system. It's a pity that he rarely uses his group member support skills, but the illusion is quite good. Depending on how you use it, these two skills can dramatically change the battle. The girl was indignant, because if the guy knew that that puppy was her, he could at least somehow hint. By the way, she was afraid. They got out. It was good. The girl said it wasn't fair anyway. Hyang replied that it was time to go to the next destination. The girl was outraged. Why so immediately? They closed 2 quests and can take a break. The hero was surprised. She was already not very tense in the underground prison. Had he heard anything about mental fatigue? She asked. The kind of fatigue that passes quickly when you move. And the guy waved a finger and told her to get ready. The girl quickly sped off, shouting at him that she would never forgive him for this. They moved to the Neverland Parade. There's no telling what will happen next, so they should be on their guard. The show started, with Bryn leading the way. Fireworks were flashing everywhere, women were dancing, and he invited everyone to the parade and greeted Min Yihan and Lady Seo Ahayan, praising them for their work well done in completing 2 missions. The guy directly asked what the last mission was waiting for them. The man answered in the last mission of hide and seek. He pointed them to the gate. Their task is to hide from the monsters that will appear from there and get to their destination. The hero immediately realized that everything would not be so simple. Everything in this hide and seek game depends on their skills. In simple words, monsters in Neverland will appear directly depending on the number of participants and their abilities. The guy thought, because of his skills, there is a high probability that someone stronger than the previous creature will come out. He will fight to protect the girl. Before starting, the man needs to determine their strength. He stretched out his hand to the guys, bent over them and announced that they were level S class. The man was crazy. For the first time he had guests with such a high level, it's incredible. The guy and the girl didn't understand how this could have happened. The man wished him luck. Both heroes were startled by what was happening. Their quest, the last festival, they will have to defeat the Cert particle or reach the key point. The variety in Norse mythology is the fire giant, Lord of Muspelheim. The reward for completing the quest is Jalfi's Thunder Steps, and failure conditions, death by Cert particle or death by Cert particle fire. The hidden task was to kill the Cert particle and eliminate a potential threat, then you can get special privileges. The number of participants was 3. Hyun was surprised. Something went wrong. A fire giant appeared in front of them, the guardian of Muspelheim, the land of the fire giants, even before the birth of the first giant. Cert lived with the sole purpose of embracing the whole world with fire. They say that the fire sword that he holds in his hand is so powerful that it is hot enough to instantly burn the entire world. The hero panicked. He took the girl by the hand and ran. How should they act? He thinks about it. If she doesn't want to turn into ashes, she should shut her mouth and run. Neverland was ablaze. We see a cat sitting on a certain blue ball. It happened because of him. Maybe he should help the guys. She hadn't meant to help. A certain woman answered him. She's curious to see what Hyung will do this time. It was dangerous to fight him in open combat, and if possible, he thought, he should avoid a direct attack and find a checkpoint. The girl thought that the control point is a carousel and pointed to the pointer to it. Great, the guy commented, they have a little more time to run. The haste skill activated, and they rushed to the point. This is a simple quest, where you just need to get to the checkpoint, divert the monster's attention with the help of Soahen. This is quite possible. Who dared to summon the fire giant? The enraged monster asked. The guy told the girl that they should split up and run separately from each other, heading for that carousel. The girl asked if she would distract him. The guy replied, but did she want to be a bait, and instructed her to run faster. Blocking the monster's path, he drew its attention to himself and ran, confusing it and teasing it with phrases. Running after the guy, the monster noticed the girl and destroyed the checkpoint when she was almost there. The quest status has been changed to impossible to complete. The carousel was blazing in front of the girl, an enraged monster asking who dares to oppose itself. Since that was the case, there was only one option left for the guy, kill the creature. He charged an attack in his hand. The entire time, only a few people were able to block his attack. Laughing, the monster said, try to block this. He attacked the guy. The guy was still blocking the attack, but the girl understood that he wouldn't last long. She had to think about what she should do. There must be a way. She peeked around the corner and shouted to the guy that she had found a way to defeat this giant. He ran away from the monster. 5 steps to the left, the girl shouted at him. Pulling away from the creature, she said about the water tank outside of Neverland, where you need to lure the monster, and if you remove the field protecting it, you can attack. No matter how much of a monster he is, he can be defeated if he can break through the vital points in his body. The girl will predict the movement of Cert with accelerated thinking and tell the guy, and he will dodge. The guy obeyed. This tactic helped to lure the monster. Go to the pond. The guy started talking to the monster and tease him about how weak he is and that he competes with a person and is afraid of him. Angry monster ran at the guy and found himself in a pond. The illusion skill has been activated. At that moment, the guy attacked the monster. Cert said that this is a very low trick. The guy replied, it doesn't matter because the main victory. The monster said that it fought only with a fraction of its strength against him. Against the real appearance and power of the guy there is no chance. The system said that they had passed the Big 3 mission the last festival. They have successfully completed hidden missions and additional rewards will be given out. They also performed an incredible feat and received an artifact, the unquenchable flame of Cert. It's over, the girl thought with a calm face as she watched the monster's bright trail. The cat thought he wouldn't need any help. Hyung is a really interesting guy. He looks like he's always trying to get stronger. She asked Hell for her opinion. She replied that he still had to learn and learn. However, she is most interested in Min Yehyun's news. It is not yet possible to reveal him as an opponent of the throne of the Aesir. Although war is inevitable, now it is too early. One of the highest among the aces, which he must kill, but the guy needs strength. In the artifact, he got Thialfi's thunderous footsteps. This is really an incredible item, as expected S-class items, not simple rattles. A girl who was hiding something approached him. She is trying to teach him again, and he ordered her to obey. It turned out that she received the Seal of Risk Bath. This item increases strength by 50 and allows you to acquire the Courage skill, that is, a skill that removes the effect of fear and increases strength and agility. He doesn't need to be immune to an abnormal status, he would rather have thought acceleration, it would be more useful. He'll leave it there for now and call the girl if the need arises. He was approached by the man who was at the beginning and said that the award was to the guy's liking. He said they'd been through a lot and it was time for him to go. Walking up to Hyun, he leaned down and took him by the shoulder, saying that he hoped they would return safely, and also added that the boy was born with the fate of an enemy of evil. Hyun was startled and ran after him, but the man was gone. They were met by people who admired that they both survived and remained intact. The crowd scared the girl, but the guy didn't care. A man was trying to get through to them. He needed to talk to the survivors according to the order, but Hyun was missing. Although he was just here, he will interview the girl. First by checking its condition from the road. Did he escape on his own? The second man asked. Definitely not, according to Agent Kim Ji-young's report. A boy from the mage class of magicians. If he wasn't an assassin, then how he was able to escape without making a sound? The man in the coat didn't understand. He was told that this guy was a battle mage. The chairwoman said they'd done a good job. They could come back and see each other later, so she dropped the call and thought about it. The boy had done something wrong and disappeared. He was definitely unusual and not the type to speak first, she thought, so she should meet him in person. Opening the news, the guy was glad that there was no news about him. Lotus had a hand in it, he wondered. One shouldn't underestimate the influence of a large guild. But he didn't think that there would be so many people there, but he was able to feel the effect of Thialfi's thunderous footsteps. When equipped, the running speed increased by more than 4 times. How many times will the speed increase if you activate them? It was hard, but it wasn't so bad, and the harvest was good, he thought. This fight had made it clear to him that he was still weak, that he needed strength to defeat his opponent without using cheap tricks, a strength that would make him someone who was impossible to touch, which will save him from the past and allow him to protect his family and comrades. This is the path he must follow. The challenge is now only getting stronger by the second. The headmaster ordered instructor Young-isu to monitor Min Yi-hyun's every move during the upcoming classes. Saying that she wouldn't disappoint him, she left. The director understood that to grow a good flower bed, it is necessary to uproot all the weeds. He is looking forward to the upcoming events. He will be able to completely get rid of the annoying dirt. On the floor of his office were sheets of paper with red crosses on them. Hyun met up with his friends, and Kim was amazed, which explains why she couldn't get through to him this weekend. He wants to say that he did not ignore the calls, it was necessary to know the measure. He doesn't even know how worried Hegemony was, and she was covering for him, and what he's paying her to eat now. Seo asked if he was okay, if he didn't have any pain, and he said that he was fine, so she shouldn't worry. He'd been out of luck for a long time, and Kim wondered if some god hated him. He is blessed by the gods rather than hated by them. A guy appeared in the office, he felt some kind of annoyance, it was Hyun. Everyone was surprised to see him, and he said that if he was going to do shit again, he should be ready. The boys pretended they didn't know the guy. He got angry and started shouting that his name was Lee Suk. Then the instructor appeared and shut up the guy, who got even angrier, and Yi-hyun didn't react at all. She started the lesson and introduced herself as young Asuna, and from now on, she would teach them the understanding of magic operations alone. She will do her best to improve their abilities, so she asks them to study hard. He thought she looked quite young, but there was no better place for a teacher than Mills Academy to gain experience. Her class is a fundamental understanding of magic, and they will mostly deal with magic expressions. Her first question was, how much do the guys know about magic? The guy with the orange strand said that magic is a supernatural thing that manifests itself from channeling mana through a magic formula. Yes, that's right, magic is the science of deducing a phenomenon from a magical expression. Now each of them will be given one book. These books contain the basic magic formulas that can be used by D-rank mages and contain all aspects of their use. Master the material from them. This is an assignment for the semester. The students were surprised. There was nothing written on the cover and the inside is also empty. Maybe something is wrong with the seal. She asked Hyung if he knew what the letters in the book were. It's a rune, he said, which was the correct answer. This book is magical. The information can be seen. Only deciphered the formula. The guy deciphered what they usually take a week for freshmen. He is much more talented than Chairman Kujane said, the teacher thought. Then she asked another question. The runic words written on the cover of the book, if he knew what they meant. Is this a joke of the Nornir system or a feature of Escher? The life of Odin and the basics of runes? He answered the question. Seo Ahayan sat in the room and thought that he was the reason she had to go through all of this, as she looked at the wounds on her legs. He doesn't even know how many questions she got when he left. What was the theme dungeon like? What happened there? What artifacts did you get? He had an urgent matter to attend to and left the reporters to her. He also instructed her not to say anything about his skills. She was very angry with him and wondered when he would remove her subordination. Since he was disappearing on his own, she should just be the first to visit him, the girl with the snide face thought. At the same time, Hyung was sitting in the library. Everything turned out to be much more interesting. For example, all magic expressions change their characteristics depending on how they are applied. A super fast chain, it can be created by combining the lightning attribute and mana chain into one formula. If you stick to the basics, the range of use of ranked magic becomes more diverse. Similarly, when you improve your basic ball handling skill and your martial arts skill increases along with it, the magic is that the more you understand the concept of the magic formula, the higher you can go. The girls still couldn't read the cover. Kim was annoyed by this. The guy praised himself because an outstanding student will surpass the teacher, which he eventually did. Seoin managed to read the cover. She was finally able to read the first page. Hyung praised her. She tried hard and succeeded. The girl was very embarrassed and covered her face with a book. She had been acting strange before. He thought, was it because of the line he had drawn in the dungeon back then? Kim was even more annoyed that she was the only one who couldn't see the cover. The teacher in the library glared at the boy, her anger starting to burn. He grinned and said it wasn't him. A raven on a branch near the library window watched the children with red eyes and then flew away. The first competition was to choose the best potion shop name, and the winner's prize was 1 box of premium potion. The guys sat at a round table and thought about the name. Hyung realized that this was a lot harder than he thought. The store hasn't opened yet, but what if they go broke before it opens? Survival is the most important thing for a raider, so the potion making business can't go bankrupt. This is a revolution, said the guy at the table. A few days ago, Min Yi-hyun was glad that the magic theory test was passed without any problems. Now he had to worry about the exam soon. In order to become stronger, the raiders are willing to spend hundreds of millions. Hard work and perseverance, of course, is good, but money is an indispensable element of leveling up. Of course, the main strength of the raider is not in money, but the guy just couldn't pass up this opportunity. Business and stocks are ideal for raising money if you know the future. If he takes half of the potions world, then he can make a lot of money, he thought as he sat at the table with the kids. Then the girl burst into the office and started shouting that first you need to keep your promises and then leave. I recognized my friend and didn't understand where she came from. She continued, telling him not to talk her out of his mouth because he had used some strange skill and escaped. When brainwashing, the target of the skill can track each other's location, and this feature cannot be disabled. The girls from the company were outraged that he really blackmailed this girl. Since she came, he told her to sit down and that he would borrow her head for a while. The girl didn't understand what was going on. Immediately, she raised her hand and shouted out what they thought about the Heavenly Demon potion. She had heard that the Heavenly Demon was the best in martial arts, only choosing at this level. The guy muttered for the girl to obey. The guys suggested other options such as Jasana's potion shop, Alice's potion shop. This won't do, he thought, it's just some kind of pit, even monsters from dungeons, where better options would be offered. Kim ruffled her hair as to why the guy didn't ask her. He thought it didn't make any sense, but he asked anyway. Its variant name was Elixir Workshop. Elixir is another name for the Philosopher's Stone created by alchemists in the past, a mysterious elixir that is said to heal wounds, even bring them back to life. The guy with the green hair said that it was an appropriate name to promote the potion, increasing the brand's value. The guy took Kim by the shoulders and praised her. She just saved him. The girl did not approve of his actions. From now on, the store is called Workshop Elixir. In the lesson, the guy said that runes are the language of magic. If you explain it, then the language of runes is the framework that makes up magic. It is the basis of magic as a device based on magical expressions. After his answer, the teacher praised the guy. This angered the boy with the orange strands. That was the end of the lesson. He approached the instructor and asked for something, showing her a magic book of the 4th highest rank, which startled the woman. This book is hard to read even for instructors. Who is this guy? The teacher thought. The guy was back in the library. Even after asking the teacher, he didn't find out any useful information. You need to start with the basics. He's gone. A man with a tie and glasses was watching him, writing something down in his notebook. The guy came to the chairwoman even earlier than she expected. They had tea on the table. In fact, he wanted to come even earlier, but exams and business did not allow him to do so. He asked her to help him with the 4th highest rank magic book. Creation that created magic, destruction that destroyed magic and brought everything back to nothing, reinforcement that made magic stronger. In the book of high-level formulas, it is very difficult for him to understand himself. Until now, he had only relied on Odin's eye. He needed a deeper understanding of magic. But the woman cannot help him in this. The guy is outraged. The concepts that appear in the 4-rank magic books are meaningless if you don't learn them yourself. He should be able to do this one himself to put himself on a par with the A-rank raiders, but since he's come for advice, she'll show him the method of learning. A training session that will allow him to understand reinforcement. The guy was very interested. His eyes lit up. He wanted anything to get stronger. Our combat system, we see a guy who trains hard with an orange armband on his arm. He activated the magic arrow skill. When this item is activated, it uses the same magic. imitation of the Glipnir thread that sealed Fenrir. The specified target stats are reduced by 50%. However, if the thread is untied or broken, the ability will return to its original state. That's all the woman told the guy and told him to continue learning only one magic formula. Well, how does the reinforcement relate to this training? He asked, and she replied that it was necessary for him to understand this for himself. It's hard to get a boost for such complex magic. She thinks a magic arrow will do. With the blindfold, the body became heavy and slow, the user's stats temporarily decreased by 50%. It's harder than he thought. In class, Kim asked if her friend was okay, because he looked rather pale and exhausted. He replied that, most likely, yes. Kim could smell Hyen's band-aids from 100 meters away. Does he even know that he's literally been living in the test room for a whole week? He thanked his friends for worrying about him and reminded them that they had a test in 2 days, and the girl hadn't even finished decoding the tasks for the upcoming exam. And if Ina gets an unsatisfactory grade, she will have to stay and catch up. The girls remembered that it was time for them to go to the library. Kim dragged her friend with her, and they said goodbye. Hyen watched them go, exhausted. He was back in the test room, having passed the 41st stage of the test perfectly. His understanding of magic formulas increased significantly. A passive formula comprehension skill was acquired, the effectiveness of the magic arrow increased, and the skill level increased. A new skill, level 2 magic arrow, was also acquired. Then, he finally understood the meaning of the amplification written in the 4th magic book. Strengthening means a jump in skill proficiency, in other words, an increase in level. How deep is the understanding of magic formulas, how excellent is the mastery of the skill itself, so much depends on the strengthening. His new 2nd level skill fires an arrow with concentrated magic power, but it's still rank B, or somewhere in the range of a rank raider, sweat dripping down the guy's face. As the woman said, the concepts described in the 4th rank magic books are meaningless if you don't learn them yourself. At first, they only wanted to take advantage of each other, and now their relationship has reached another level. Director Koo Jain, this is instructor Kim Seoki. Someone knocked on his door. He gave permission to enter. It was the instructor. The director did not pay attention to him and continued to look at the sheet. The instructor thought that his reputation was damaged due to the incident in the dungeon. He needed to rehabilitate himself. He said that the preparations for the event were completed, and the director was happy. They